Greetings, gamers, and welcome to the 16th live stream from the MisfitGamersStudios. I'm your host, Vortex, and this is D&D Discussions. Today we're going to have a good topic on our hands. I have Kage here in the studio with me, and we're going to be talking about when we decide the difference between creating an item for in-game use by our players and kind of when that's appropriate versus when we feel like creating an item that's going to be more specific to a plot generation. So something that's put in there to have the players strive for something, to create a goal, not so much a reward or something that we want to see, but again, something that's really going to drive the plot line. Before we get to that, we do have another viewer submitted item. Seems to be pretty common, so I think we might be continuing with this of doing like a little homebrew review right at the start of the stream. Then we'll get into our topic. We have Cosmic with us today, and it is Cosmic's submittal, so we'll go ahead and go through that here just in a minute. So let me go ahead and bring Kage in, and we will get started. All right, how you doing today?
How's it going, guys? It's good to be here. Very excited. Another stream at the MisfitGamersStudios.
All right, so we also have our first comment from Cosmic. So he doesn't know how much I've told you about his world, but the item that he sent is a late game item. It is 1 of 6, 2 being defense focused, 2 being attack focused, 1 being utility buff, debuff, so your support character focused, and the other being an artifact wondrous item. So to actually get this started, Cosmic, glad that you brought that up. Let me go ahead and adjust our lights here. Let's make sure that doesn't look too bad. I think we were better there. All right, so yes, there were a couple of things that I had missed when I had described Cosmic's world to you. And a lot of the things that we were focused on were those original items that he had submitted, as well as one of the settings, which I thought was really great, which was the ancient god that had been buried. The weapon was the temple, and then his body became the cave. So there was a couple of things that I also had forgot to mention. So Cosmic, help me out here, because I don't think you gave me the I don't think you sent me a description of your celestial god that basically runs this realm, and that's where this item comes from. So let me double check and make sure that I don't already have that info, but I think I needed you to help me re-describe that celestial god, what they are.
Is this the celestial god that is buried?
No. This is a different one. This is like I want to say this one was the creator of the world. But again, that's where I want to get his verification, because I didn't cover it because I didn't remember all the details.
No, that's fair. That's fair. But no, I very much like this premise. It's almost like old school, like Greek mythology style stuff.
Mm-hmm.
There are different layers to the gods and the celestial bodies and the entities. Some are some's mothers, but they can all go to war with each other, and all kinds of craziness can happen. That's very cool.
Well, and I'm always fascinated because the way that I'm always interested in the way that someone will take that extra step to describe, like, basically, what is behind the curtain, like who is behind the curtain, right? Because it's one thing to just have a setting that just works, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I'm always fascinated when someone decides to take that extra step, and it's one thing to just say, hey, I have gods and I have deities, whether they're your own creation or not, but it's another to make that hierarchy, to build out why this place exists. So how does it work the way it works, and why does it? That's one of the things that I love so much about building that hierarchy for my realm, is because a lot of it really comes down to my need to have everything explained, and that's just my jam. What I like to do is make sure that the things that I put in my world have a reason, make sense, and have a lineage of a concept, right? Like from start to finish. And all of that is potential plot points for the players, but it's also just because for me, that's what makes my world more enjoyable, is when everything makes sense. And so I really enjoyed creating the celestial and deity hierarchy, and the concept of why they're there doing their jobs, and why Zenith, who is if Zenith created everything, why create gods to take your power away, right? Like, why and it's that idea of delegation. There's so much that I need to be, that I need to control. But over time, he learned the idea, and this the story behind it is the idea that the more he created and the bigger High Point got, the more unbalanced and harder it was to do things, right?
All under his control.
All under his control, and he's a god of neutrality. So the idea was to try to single-handedly force your neutral will on things wasn't really his jam, but in order to keep everything balanced, it was a lot of, it was a lot of, I mean, you're a deity, but mental capacity in the sense of you can still only have so much in your focus. I mean, especially with an entire, realm, a universe evolving. So his concept was, if I parse out my will into these areas that need balance and let those take the delegated power, they essentially are pieces of him that will be able to stay focused on each of their jobs.
Is this almost, and I don't want to say the inception of the concept, because I'm likely the concept would have been there regardless, but is this almost a manifestation of how we were talking about in one of our earlier streams about mantles, right?
Yes.
So like almost he there is a need for these other entities to basically rule over certain aspects, based off of,
So I'm really glad you bring that up. So that's, of course, I am always in DM mode, so I always basically pull my punches in terms of information I give out. I'm always, just natural tendency. But good point that you bring up. So that is the other side, or one of the other sides to this dice roll, essentially, in terms of balance, right? Yes, a lot of it was for story purposes. It just made sense for him to create things to go out and do, and therefore it also allowed the world to evolve. Because he wanted a world to evolve, he allowed these aspects to have different personalities, different alignments other than his own neutrality. So he would always create things in balance. So he would send two pieces of himself that would help counterbalance whatever he was building.
Interesting.
So that is part of the reason why I like to build it. But you are right. There are aspects that I look at in terms of how I have the hierarchy of mantles. So with that, Zenith has his sphere. He has stumbled across this where that he can exercise his power. But like we've talked about, there are mantles far beyond him, and he recognizes that there are eternal mantles that no matter what he's created, whether he could snap everything out of existence and these mantles would disappear, but they would just not be here, but they wouldn't be gone. Yeah. And understanding that, and understanding the world that he was building, he also soon learned, which is why I have multiple phases, which is, I've talked to you about this. I don't know how much of this, I think I've mentioned this briefly way early on in the stream, in one of my first streams, that because of my learning process, I like to take what I've learned as a DM and put that also into the realm as
actualize it as a part of its growth. I like that.
So, I've gone through a lot of trials and tribulations. I've gone through a lot of good and bad ideas. And part of that is learning how to be a better DM. So I have right now currently multiple phases, about 4 phases of me as a DM, of what I've learned over the last 10, 12 years. And with that, my realm has had 3 major wars, which are the benchmarks of me overcoming big issues. And so I marked those as defining changes to the realm, where literally my mechanics would change, or big things would change, but I also like to keep it in the concept of an evolving story where Zenith did wipe out whole things, but not everything that existed in that previous one got wiped out. He wiped out all existence of what was, but some things he chose to keep. So those things, in my mind, it was like I could have just said, I kept those as ideas. But in my mind, because of the evolution of what Zenith was doing, those things remember the times before. Yes. And that made so much more fun, because now all of my trials and tribulations, all of the different versions of my realm until it got to High Point are interactable. You can find an NPC who is alive back at my first iteration and
who
would be able,
your original players potentially.
Exactly. And just the idea, so that was so much more fun to me, right? That was fundamentally solid for me to do, which was to keep that progression. And so with that, and with my understanding of mantles, because everything has to keep that balance, Zenith soon learned the more he made and the bigger he expanded, there were things he could not control. because I have like with mine, there is all of the Fae stuff from D&D, but I also mix in the Fae influence from the Dresden Files. And with that, that's a place that isn't Zenith's creation. That is an existence. That is one of those, like, again, it's like an eternal mantle. It is an existence that, because Zenith allowed his world to get so big, there was always an inevitable point at which, once a creation gets so big, the Never Never will intersect with it. It's just inevitable, because the Never Never is a place of existence by proxy, right? It's your connection to that will happen based off, like it says in the Dresden Files, based off of certain situations. Locations will just automatically make a relationship to the Never Never, which makes that a doorway to that place. That is something that Zenith would never be able to get around. The bigger his place got, eventually, even if it was only one spot, the Never Never would eventually manifest, and he couldn't stop that. There are once he learned after, I think it was in my third iteration. So the iteration before this is when I really started playing bigger with mantles. Mm-hmm. So that's when I basically said that he learned what he honestly learned about mantles, and finally became humbled with the sense of, he used to play with making mantles, but then he realized that no matter what he did, as soon as you get so big, mantles are natural. Mantles will manifest regardless. And he got to a point to where he could not essentially control the mantles. Like, it got to a point to where he couldn't create a personal avatar or another version of himself or another. There was a point to where he couldn't.
He had to let them create themselves almost.
Yeah. It wasn't even that. It was when they were being created, he couldn't keep up or even attempt to try to keep up with creating vessels for them. The mantles would be created, and at first, the first one or two, he'd be able to work his way into one of his creations, taking the mantle. But there was a certain point to where the mantle would just start choosing, or he couldn't get to it fast enough, or he couldn't create something that would accept. There's eventually a point to where mantles either manifested their own. We talked about this before. Yeah. The eternal mantles will always have their own. Then you have the tier down, which are the mantles of powers that will create their own very first vessel. They are powerful enough to create their own vessel, but they're not eternal. But that vessel can die, and the mantle can then be passed. And then, of course, there's the lesser mantles, which lesser beyond that is just who created it or how it was created, and usually those need to be accepted or put somewhere. They don't come with their own vessel usually at first. But yeah, because of that, he started realizing that he needed more control, because once the Never Never started becoming more prevalent, he needed people to watch that, and he could not always watch every border. So he created gods and deities and immortals to be certain protectors of that. And the same thing, once he got to a certain point to where you get so big and enough things can control magic, you can't control the weave anymore. I mean, that's not his job. He isn't Mystara, and he's not even going to try. So the idea behind controlling something like the weave, you can't control it as a whole. But what he's learned, through all of his own personal adventuring, is you can control enough aspects. It's kind of like you can't control a parachute, right? Like, one person can't grab a hold of a parachute and actually control it in the wind. But you get enough people around in a circle, and everybody holds one grip point, and now all of a sudden you actually have partial control. It's still going to dome out. Kind of, I'm thinking about what we used to play as a game as we were kids. The big tarp, and then it's like with enough people you can control it to a point. The dome is still going to happen. It's still going to
act within its natural form.
Exactly. It will morph. It will change. It will inflate. It will deflate. But at the end of the day, you can't control it, you can't manipulate it, but you can control. I don't know.
Influence it. I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, you can't take full control of it, but with enough help, you can keep it at bay. And that was his mindset, is the more things he created, the more he would have to have control points. You would have to have more people around that parachute. And that's where the need for more and more things created. And this also is an out-of-game thing. Again, everything is that in and out-of-game concept. Mm-hmm. This is also to help me explain why, because I want this living world to work, right? I took the challenge to make an open world that constantly evolves. But that, of course, comes with a lot of limitations. Like, the one good thing about creating a campaign, you can just sit there and write it out. And everything's right there. It's always your notes. That's not how my world works. It's not how my brain works. It's not how I work.
Same.
But
Same.
just like with Zenith, learning all of that stuff, that's one of the things that I learned, which is why those first 2 Great Wars are all about power struggle. I did not have a good concept of balancing when I very first started DMing. And so with the concept of creating all of these different deities and all of these control structures in game, it works because of all of these different reasons, and it works in game for a great storyline and for a great concept of world building, so players can discover this is stuff you can go talk to Zenith about. But it's not only in game world building, it's in game reasoning, because I have to have everything that has a structure and a reason. So this also makes more sense than, well, there's just gods. But also the reason why there's so many, and why I can justify my pop culture references, especially when it comes to deity level stuff. Just like with Zenith, he needs control points and he can't do it by himself. There's a lot in my world that I can't do by myself right out the get-go. I mean, it's taken me 10 years to get here. I need more time.
Yeah.
But with pop culture references, I can say, hey, I like the Dresden Files. I'm very steeped in the Dresden Files. That is essentially a rule book, a set of things that I already know. If I section that into my realm, and that is not to say that everything Fae is controlled by that reference, because I still do follow the Fae rules of D&D. This is just another layer to the Fae to help explain the behind the curtains reasoning and mechanics, but it also gives me a point at which those are rules I already know.
And there's history to it, and it adds a lot more depth to it as well, for sure.
And so that's the thing is, with these pop culture references, with Zenith creating these gods, the reason why, like with the Old Gods campaign, why you guys are dealing with the gods that you are. You guys are dealing with the very normal, everyday gods. And the reason Zenith chose them, because he had experience, or at least understanding of those types of gods through his adventures, but he chose them partially because they fit a role, and they fit the narrative. But I chose them because I know those lores. Those lores are easy for me to work with, and it's easy for me to build a story around. So in and out of game, me and Zenith are doing the same exact thing. We are putting entities in place to do a job. I'm putting those things in place because it's not lore I have to now go research. I'm comfortable putting these things in here as pop culture references because I'm comfortable enough with what I know off the top of my head, and it's quicker reference than D&D material sometimes. So all of those layers, and that's why I'm glad you brought that up, because those are all of those layers and reasonings why I build that out, because it is showing the struggles that I go through, and those I represent on Zenith, because he's building the realm. He's my character, building this realm and building this universe from scratch, and I'm the one creating it, but I go through struggles, I go through trials, I go through mistakes, and so does he. I don't think it would be fair to say that everything's perfect. I love the idea that he has gone through these trials, that he has entities that currently live that have watched him do this, that literally you could have an entity that either looks at him with such pride that nobody else can understand, and then there's other entities that look at him with disdain because they've watched his folly and realize he's not the God Almighty that everyone believes, because they saw when he wasn't. So I love that. I love that you can have all of these different viewpoints, and it just makes it more enriching for me to have a story that can be followed.
Yeah,
right?
I like that.
It just so that's that. It looks like Cosmic's giving us a lot, so I think that's a good intro.
We got some.
But yes, so let me go ahead and get through. Okay, good. He's typed out quite a bit. All right, so his world. We've already talked about a little bit of the setting. So this is his goddess of this world.
Goddess.
So it is a dragon goddess.
Okay.
This dragon goddess created the world, or the dragon goddess that created the world. So it is a dragon goddess that created the world. It is a white dragon. I'm probably gonna mispronounce this depending on exactly how you have your I forget what those things are called.
Your accent marks.
The accent. But I'm guessing it's Louis.
Okay.
But a white dragon that created the world. As a dragon, she has scales. So this is where the item that we're going to talk about comes into play in a little bit.
Got it.
Every scale on her body bears the name of a creature born in the material plane.
Okay.
So her scales are literally one for every existing.
So that means if the creature isn't on her scales, it doesn't exist. Is
I mean,
that's what it sounds like it's saying.
well, and again, it's born in the material plane. So you got to understand material plane.
Interesting.
So it's not every creature entity in pure existence.
It's okay,
But
no,
it's
that's fair.
but and again, his realm is going to be different than the different expanses. But yes, anything born in the material plane will get a scale. So imagine this.
Okay.
So I'm already
like
just
this.
imagining this constantly morphing body of this dragon with scales constantly creating, dying, like
That's
all of
crazy.
it is just constantly moving on this just divine scale. When a creature dies, the respective scale falls off the dragon's body. So you imagine just constantly this pulsating, just dropping, and then new ones growing constantly.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
It is theorized that creatures that have a scale reformed in the same place on the dragon's body is a form of reincarnation of the previous creature.
Interesting.
So no scale. So every time a scale grows, another scale will not grow there. Well, it's theorized that it won't grow there unless that creature gets reincarnated.
Unless it's like a reincarnation of okay.
Yeah. So every scale like that's regrown would be. So that's already like fascinated me. I already was digging this idea because I love the idea when you can again.
Very much so.
It's not just saying I have a dragon goddess. It's you've thought of these different layers, and this is what I love when people do this. Is the idea of that life cycle, just having that concept of reincarnation built into that story. Even though it's only theorized, it's still just a nice little touch. People just believe this, and I love when people do that. I love when you're like, people believe this, but they don't know if it's true. Because I tell you guys that all the time. This is what people in my realm believe. But that's the whole point. Is it true? That's the adventure. That's the adventure, and I love it. Reincarnation. Each scale bears the birth name of the creature's native language. So I do like that nice little touch.
Names are.
Yeah. So you can see like with High Point, I'm already that's
so.
very important to have names. You can think of it as a birth certificate of sorts, as a dragon scale rather than a piece of paper. The campaign's main BBEG once did battle and defeated but not killed due to a lack of strength this goddess. So the BBEG attempted to, or fought the dragon, defeated the dragon but didn't kill the dragon.
Interesting.
The BBEG imprisoned her in a 6-layer barrier and by 6 massive chains that hold her in place. These are the chains of corruption. They slowly siphon off her life force over tens of thousands of years. Minor defect in the chains cause a small amount of magic to leak out slowly filling the world with the ability to use magic. So
That's very cool.
So he's explaining the use of magic by literally the fact that this creature's,
very cool.
like the goddess, is actually trapped. And because he's trying to siphon it, his siphon isn't a perfect siphon. So that bleed off is what everybody in the world, like, that's so beautiful.
So my question is the siphoning, is this BBEG like siphoning it for his own uses? Like, is he using it for something?
We'll get there.
Okay.
So these are the chains of corruption. They cause all the magic. Minor change ability and spell slots. Okay, so the dragon goddess's life force / magic power. So the dragon goddess life force, magic power, the 6 temples that hold up the keeper of the chains. So there are 6 temples that hold up each one of the chains.
Okay.
They are the keepers of the chain. Each temple houses a lesser legendary item that is meant to be sacrificed to the goddess's small shrine on the central island. The shrine was once the temple of the gods, but let's see. So the shrine was once a temple of the gods spell, but with natural events like earthquakes. Okay, so it was once the temple. So yeah, you have to take it to the center island, which was once the temple of the gods. But due to earthquakes, it looks like it's been, stricken down to ruins. Inside the remains of the now shrine, the special crystal that, when touched, enables telepathy with the goddess.
So okay.
So this is in the original Shrine of the Gods. There's a crystal that will allow you to speak telepathically with her.
So Out of curiosity, so we're talking about this BBEG did battle
Yes.
with this goddess.
Defeated the goddess, but didn't kill her.
Did this battle occur on the material plane?
We don't know.
Okay. Because it almost sounds like these temples are physical temples that exist somewhere, potentially in the material plane.
Right.
And betwixt which are the chains that...
But if the goddess is still actively, doing her scale thing, this might not be on the prime material plane because it would also have to grow and move with her. So it's probably in a more divine plane, I'm assuming. But it is a place that you can go. So the central island of his setting is where they have to go to sacrifice these items. You have to get the items, sacrifice them there. But with there is also the crystal there that will allow you to speak to the goddess. So touching the lesser legendary items to the telepathy crystal breaks the item. So you have to take each of the 6 items there, touch them to the crystal. It will break the item.
Interesting.
It will transfer
Almost
the
like
magic it held
resonance.
through one of the chains, overloading it and shattering it. So the idea is that you have the goddess. So microphone's the goddess.
Mm-hmm.
6 chains of corruption are holding her still, and because they're imperfect, that bleed off is what causes magic in the world.
Right.
Then you have 6 temples that are holding those chains in place.
Right.
Inside each temple, I'm assuming the idea is what's powering these temples are 6 legendary items, each of which you have to venture for and get.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have to take each item to the central island, which is now in ruins, so you have to venture through there. And then as you touch each item or a item to the center crystal, it will shatter, and that amount of energy will shatter one of the chains.
Got it.
And so you have to do that 6 times in order to be able to free the goddess. Once all of the 6 chains are broken, she is freed, but the 6th chain doubles as the shrine's remaining foundation, causing the shrine to collapse as the last chain breaks. The goddess uses some of her greatly diminished power and energy to save the party from the otherwise TPK via fall damage. So that'll be he already pre-planned his little cutscene.
Very nice, very nice. I like that.
Creatures born in planes other than the prime material plane don't have corresponding scales. She blesses and grants the party scales bearing their names. The item... so once you've saved her, she will grant the party scales bearing their names.
Like, when she says grant them, like, she'll grow one, or she'll, like, physically give them one? Interesting.
So this is end game. So this is where we're getting to end game stuff here. So the item I sent is one of the items.
One of the 6 items that you need to go break and shatter.
No. This is so as one of the items which morphs from So this is when she says you rescue her, she's going to give each of the players a scale with their name on it.
Mm-hmm.
That's a special item. It's not the scale. That's not their scale.
Got it.
This item will instantly turn into something.
Got you.
One of these things is what we are going to review today.
Got it. Okay. Bet.
So the item I sent is one of the items which morphs from the scale at the moment of great need, being when the PC is on their death saves and has at least 1 failure.
Interesting.
So you'll get the scale, hold on to it, and then when you have had 1 of your 3 death save fails, it will activate.
Sick.
The scale morphing into the item also heals them for hit points equivalent to 2 of their hit die. Take the average not rolled. That's interesting. Take the average not rolled. So 2 hit die and then the average. That's nice.
Okay. Bet.
The fun part about the chains of corruption being the cause of magic in the world, once they're broken, it's like poking a hole in the balloon. It'll eventually run out of air, or in this case, the world will eventually run out of magic.
So... Okay.
So how fascinating is that for... Because again, the game isn't over. You get these items after freeing her, so... You've freed her, you get these items, and there's still a game because these are supposed to be when you're dying. So there's still a game to be played. You still have to go after the BBEG. You haven't necessarily killed him yet. And now the world is slowly losing magic.
So the magic of the world was just the residual magic from the goddess.
No, well, yeah, from the chains,
from the
siphoning it off. Yeah,
Yeah,
so it's literally the magic
once
is.
you save the goddess,
He just said it's like a balloon being poked. It will slowly deflate. The magic will slowly
stop coming to the world, but the goddess will hopefully.
Why would she? She didn't before, and
Well, not
it was
not like give it back to the world, but like she'll regain her own power.
She will. Yes, that's the idea.
Right.
She'll heal, but that's the idea. Is in order to save the goddess, in order to stop
screwing
her,
the rest of the world of
you
magic.
have to take magic out of the world.
But I mean, here's the deal. Would you rather have a world without magic or no world at all?
No, absolutely.
Because like that.
And what's really interesting.
What's he finna do?
Well, and what's really interesting is depending upon how long that takes, you're gonna go after the BBEG, but that's gonna make the final battle really interesting if magic's kind of getting wonky. And they're like, because in High Point, what I would do is instead of it just like it would like partially slowly diminish, but I'd also have like little pockets where it's like really different.
Like it's waning
so if you've waited too long, or if like the battle is like way later after that, it would just be really interesting to have everyone just anytime you do magic, you just have to roll percentiles for like basically imagine eventually like all magic's wild magic for like
That would be so
because it's
scary.
just magic's so messed up.
You never know what's gonna happen, and even if it does happen, you never know what you're gonna get.
After the goddess grants the party their special scales, she dies, having expended the last of her power.
Oh. Shoot. Okay. And so this is the same world with the dead god in it that they mine for magic items.
Yeah, he was another like...
Okay. Interesting. So, she dies. Now, theoretically, because currently I'm watching an anime, Shield Hero, and there's this part in Shield Hero where they kill a dragon, and then it's like corpse is like radiating like energy, and it's like having an effect. So like, I'm curious if this god's corpse. Now, again, we don't exactly know where this god's corpse is, where this battle happened, and where she got freed from. But theoretically, this god's corpse is gonna have an effect. It's gonna
theoretically,
it's gonna something.
I mean that's how my logic would work. If one god had gems, this is the absolute goddess that's everything. But of course, it begs the question. So now who's the goddess? Because where'd her power go? She died, but did she die? Did she reincarnate? Is she a phoenix? Does she just resurrect?
Is there a vacuum? Does her corpse kind of turn into like an egg and reborn the new god that's like regened or whatever?
Just because the world's creator dies doesn't mean the world it made does. So she's gone.
True. That's very true.
And yeah, there's nothing wrong with that, especially if you have it set up to where that if the world is not required upon their power, then yeah, they don't.
And that was the other thing. She was in prison for who knows how long.
Yeah, so it doesn't need to be run by her, but
yes.
Yeah, interesting that her death, does and that's really interesting of a concept because not only does she die, all magic goes, out the window.
You see, I'm very curious about the setting in which all this is happening, because if there's like an entire like pantheon, okay, maybe she's the creator of this world, but maybe does she have brother sister gods? Are there any other dragons like her that have this type of power / influence? This is a very in-depth world that I would enjoy exploring. Because,
you know what I'm saying, man?
Yes, like just like that game you were talking about. Like there are so many. It's really awesome when you can find something that you actually can just go into and explore and play with and see where it leads and see where it takes you. That's one of my favorite things about this game. But that is very cool. I am thoroughly impressed, and I really hope you submit the rest of those items because, I want to see them all.
So here's the first one. Let's get into it. There we go. That's a little better. So only obtainable at level 18 or above. So end game.
This is some end game shit.
This is some end game shizzle, which would really suck. Like, imagine a player missed a D&D session or two, or just imagine, like, depending on the DM and how they do XP, imagine everybody in the party is level 18, 19, and you have one player that's level 17.
Just
you
like
free her,
one...
and it's like, and then, like, she's just handing him out, and she's like, thanks. I'm dead. just right before she can give it to him, she's like, oh, and unfortunately... her power's gone. You don't get anything. My bad. She's dead. But again, it's all, it says only obtainable, but I don't know if that necessarily means you just can't use it. Maybe it's also, again.
Yeah.
But it would just be kind of funny if there's that one player that's just level
Only
17.
tunable.
All right, so Dragon's Wing Shield. It is a tower shield type item. And the item rarity is divine, so basically this is your only chance. You ain't seeing this ever again.
Listen, one of a kind.
Cosmic says that the magic eventually goes away. So 10,000, tens of thousands of years. The best part he likes about that he likes the most about it is that the BBG somehow knows about the scales and the cycle of life and reincarnation, and he uses that to his advantage. The barrier that holds the goddess in place means that as more creatures are born and die, the barriers become crowded and weathered scales, acting as a suffocation. Oh, that's right. So because she's trapped in confinement and not able to be in her own area, she's actually also suffocating herself slowly as more and more creatures in the prime material plane are born. Because it's literally just...
Because they don't have space to grow like they're supposed to.
Yeah, so it's a suffocation hazard. So no worries about the typos. We're getting through it. But yeah, so the idea is that it's also torture. It's just pure torture that he's doing. So this BBEG just needs to die in every possible way.
Yo, that's raw, dude.
So this item, the shield, auto attunes upon creation. Which, makes sense. It's they're named. It's created by the god for them. Makes sense. So, effect. It grants a +5 bonus to your armor class. This tower shield holds 3 charges, represented by 3 glowing feathers on the shield's interior. The side facing the player, not the attacker. So, inside the shield. As a reaction to getting hit, you can expend 1 charge to sprout webbed wings to block and reflect half the damage as radiant back to the attacker and knocking them back 5 feet.
Okay.
So let's go that again. So you get hit, so they get through your +5 AC. +5 AC bonus, right? So whatever your AC is, +5, they get through that, they hit you. You can say, spend a charge, I'm only going to take half that damage. And then I'm going to turn the other half back on them as radiant, which is nice. I do like that little touch. And you're going to knock them back 5 feet. Being with the tower shield, I kind of like that because normally you wouldn't be able to bash with the tower shield because that thing's like heavy as shit. But again, late game item with half damage being sent back, I do like the pushback.
Yeah.
That's really competitively advantageous.
Can we go back just a little bit?
Yeah.
When it says how it's triggered.
So as a reaction to getting hit. So so someone out hit they outdid your AC. So you already have the +5 to AC. They go through that and they hit you.
Okay, so
if you would Cosmic says, so if you would have taken 30 damage, it's fully negated. Oh, so it's fully negated.
Oh, you take no damage.
So you spend 1 charge, sprout way to block and reflect. I thought it meant you only block half and reflect that half. No,
Got
you
it.
block all damage and then reflect back 50% to the attacker.
So my question is,
and you push them back 5 feet.
Does this include ranged attacks?
I don't think it would be able to.
Because
it might be
just reflecting it back, and again, you're doing it as radiant damage, so you're converting whatever energy or damage you would have taken and reflecting it back. So these wings, I'm guessing, sprout out of your back, and they engulf yourself, and then they bash whatever it is that attacked you back at the attacker.
Yeah, you sprout wings to block the attack. So I would, because this is divine. Yeah, I would rule that range should work.
And you could it's like I imagine like a beam of
and you gotta understand reaction to getting hit. This isn't just in comp. This is magic.
Yeah,
you get hit with the magic. Anything. Yeah, no,
now,
I'm down for that.
Would you consider taking damage from a fireball getting hit? Or does it specifically, or do you have to be targeted by a spell to be considered?
So if we're going by how he's written it, it says getting hit, which means taking any damage. So any damage that you have taken will be negated, and then whatever sent that damage to you, it will be reflected back
So
upon
say if it was like a buried like explosion trap or something like that you took the damage from and you used this, it would hit the trap or the source of the damage and reflect it back at it.
So I would think like if it's a trap, yes. If you have like a trap and it's trying to damage you, I think what you would I would rule that it would reflect half the damage and probably break the trap, in my opinion. Like it would actually damage the trap itself.
Right. And so it likely wouldn't be able to be usable depending on what.
Yeah, I don't think it would make it like I wouldn't say that it would go back. I mean, granted, this is a divine thing. It could go back to the maker, which would be fucking hilarious. Someone just like sits there, sets a trap. 3 months later, they just like, oh what? Oh, why did I get stabbed, man? Like,
get out of here.
Oh no, but I would say that because not only is the way it's written, but because we're talking about 18th level and higher. Yeah, full negative damage, half back as radiant, and a pushback. I don't see a problem with that because with only 3 charges, we still don't know if you can get the charges back, and we don't know if it's 1 charge for every ability.
Give a little clarification.
So it could be. So let's see. So it could, but the knockback part of the effect couldn't trigger. The wings sprout from the shield, not the player.
Got it.
Okay, so the shield comes out and slaps it away. So you would be able to negate any damage, but you won't push back. Yeah,
if it was ranged. Okay, that makes sense.
So I'm also curious though. Well, I'm assuming because again, it's divine, so it really doesn't have any. Because I was thinking like, well, can it only do damage? Can it only send the damage back if it can still see the attacker? But again, it's divine damage; it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So that would be more interesting is if you had like if you could use that against someone who has like really really long range, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like so not even in the same
area.
area.
You got sharpshooter; they got 300 feet of range.
Yeah. Like, oh yeah, no that okay. I'm not upset with it so far. So let's see here. So as a reaction to an ally next to you getting hit, so I'm assuming within 5 feet.
Yep.
You can expect 1 charge, and the shield will sprout wings to block the attack. If the attack still hits, as a reaction, when you're next to an ally next to you, okay. As a reaction to an ally next to you getting hit, you can expend 1 charge to sprout scale wings to block the attack. If the attack still hits, the scale wings cut the damage the ally takes in half. This effect also raises the ally's AC by 2 as long as they stay next to you or until the end of your next turn. So how would it still hit? That would be, I think that's where I'm getting confused.
Yeah, and I think the way that it's like contextually,
because we know that it's triggered upon an ally. So I'm here, you're next to me 5 feet. You get hit. If I get hit, I can do the first one.
Say my AC is 17 and they hit me with an 18, right? You activate this ability because I got hit.
Right.
Right? And so perhaps when it says you block the attack, maybe it means you add the shield's AC. 5. Or maybe you just interpose your own AC.
Oh, okay. So
one of those two.
So it's part of this. Okay. So when an ally next to you within 5 feet gets hit,
he says
what you do is you spend a charge, and essentially what you're doing is giving them a +2 to their AC. If the attack still hits after that boost,
gotcha.
It will be cut in half. It will just be cut in half.
The damage will be
and they still maintain that +2 damage either until they'll maintain it as long as they stay next to you, or and then once they walk away until the end of your next turn. So they'll get a temporary buff as long as you do that. So what's really interesting about that one is that AC boost like continues.
It's like shield.
But the problem is though. So I'm assuming you're kind of like giving them the protect. Well,
I'm thinking the wings that sprout from the shield are like maintaining coverage over this adjacent ally.
Yeah, but that's true. You're basically giving them. Interesting. I would almost say, for high point purposes, I would say that as a reaction to an ally getting hit, you may spend a charge to give them. I would even go as far as say up to 3 of this shield's AC. So I would say you can choose to give them 1, 2, or 3 bonus to their AC, taking it away from you.
Interesting.
As long as
I
they're
hear
next
why
to
you're saying
you,
that.
as long as they're next to you, or
Yeah.
until they walk away into the end of your next turn.
Mm-hmm.
Because the reason why I'm saying that, and the only reason why I'm saying that, is because contextually in a battle, especially for how it works in High Point, even though it's divine and I'm protecting you, the idea is that it's kind of like a concentration spell. The idea is that I've spent this charge, and now we're focused on you. Why do I still get all of my boosts? Why do I get the +5, and I can still spend another charge on myself? I think there has to be the idea that this is already a really powerful weapon, but because you're taking the wings and giving it, like if I'm this way and you're over here, I'm giving you a +2.
Yeah.
Why do I still get my +5? So I would say that the idea is you can spend, once they get hit, you spend a charge, and you can give them up to 3 of the AC from the shield, essentially, and for the same time frame, but you lose that AC while you're giving it to them. That would be my only change.
Okay.
Your wording's actually not too bad. It's just, again, it's putting the whole picture together. We're only going through it one by one. Had we actually read this beforehand, we would have more contextuals, just like you always tell me I got to keep reading. So it's really not as much you as it's just we're also stopping every sentence to piece it together as we go. And this is, normally we would both be doing this in like minutes or seconds, because we would just be reading and this would just be going through, but also trying to verbalize it also makes it hard. But yes, no, I do see what you're saying. I like the idea that you're basically kind of being a sentinel for them. I just think that the idea of being a sentinel for them should come with some sort of limitation on yourself, because you or your magic is focused on them, so it shouldn't be focused on you. But that's High Point rules.
And I totally get that balancing effect. I was almost gonna say that the wings coming out should at least maybe mitigate a little bit of that. Maybe the wings add a 2 to your pool to pull from for them, meaning instead of just the 5, you have like 7.
Yeah, gotcha.
Because their wings are more than you had before, and the 5
well,
was
and here's another example of why this would also help balance, right? Because in the first one, you're already getting the +5. You get these 3 charges. But in this one, you don't get to reflect the damage back. It's purely protection, and they don't get full damage taken from them. It's only halved.
Yes.
So if you think about it, if you're doing great and your buddy gets damaged first, like they would because you have the +5, you could say, hey, how much over did they get you? 1, here, take 1 of mine, because I don't need 5. I can deal with 4. Mm-hmm. Take 1 of mine, I'll get damage negated, right? That's scenario 1. Mm-hmm. Or if they're like, man, they went 4 over, but like, well, here, take 2. For the rest of the round, because that was a higher roll, so they're most likely not going to hit you that high.
You'll have the damage.
So you're thinking tactically, but you'll only have the damage. But now stay next to me, and you're going to get that from now on. Now I have a -2 to my AC. Strategically, these guys haven't been hitting me at all the battle, but they've always been missing by 1 or 2. Mm-hmm. Now I can get hit and trigger mine, which allows me to do the damage back, right? So you can strategically, if you were to give up the AC by using that other one, you could also strategically use that to prime yourself for the first use.
And I think this would be fair in a situation like this. Say I had used my actually technically it would be really hard to do both, because don't they both use your reaction?
No, it's a reaction of someone getting hit. So if you're in a battle and you get hit first, I can give you the AC, and now I'm easier to hit. So if I get hit, now I can spend another charge.
But when it says as a reaction, I feel like if you look at the wording of this spell...
you wouldn't be able to do it in the same turn. Like you wouldn't be able to do it like back to back.
Okay.
But like I'm saying, like on my turn, like I do my attack, blah, blah, blah. You get hit on the enemies, boom, I give you that, right? Mm-hmm. Turn order goes back around. Now it's next turn, I get the -2. So it also depends upon what rule set they're dealing with too. Sometimes DMs will allow reactions based on like just any situation. I've known DMs who will say any opportunity attack is valid, regardless. Even if you have 5, you still get to attack without. That's excessive. Usually the idea is you can have like 1 reactionary attack per full combat cycle. Some people don't care. Some are like, hey, opportunity attack is opportunity attack. You know what I mean?
No, yeah. There are definitely people that
so either way, you are correct. If depending on what rule set you are, I still think the tactic isn't that problematic though, because the idea is you're lowering your AC to eventually use your reaction. So even if you had to wait through a whole cycle.
All I was gonna mention is that, like, say you did use it back to back, or say you say, okay, so their AC boost lasts until the end of your next turn.
If they aren't next to you.
As long as they're next to you, yeah.
Well, no, it's the way I read it. This effect also raises their AC as long as they stand next to you, or until the end of your next turn. So I read that as the moment I already do this reaction, as long as you and I are 1 square away, you now have a permanent +2 to your AC as long as you are 1 square away. Once you step away at the end of my next turn, you'll lose that, which is why I say I should be giving it to you from my shield, and then at the end of the next turn, if you step away from me, I should get it back. That's why I'm thinking that it should be a granting of AC from the shield, not just a boost.
Let's run the scenario then real quick. So if I get hit, you give me the boost.
Boom.
Right? Boom. I'm standing next to you for 2, 3, 4 turns.
You always have the +2.
Right? Sitting here with this +2 bonus. The wings are still out, whatever the case may be. All right? Scenario 1, turn 4, I walk away. As I walk away, I maintain this boost.
Correct.
No matter how far I can move 30 feet away from you, and I still have this
until the end of my next turn
boost until the end of your next turn. So can you read it one more time?
So as a reaction to your ally getting hit, you can expend a charge and give them a +2 to their AC and block the attack. If the attack still hits after the +2 to the AC, the scales will cut the damage in half. This takes effect as long as they stand next to you or until the end of their next turn. So as far as I see that, is when your buddy gets hit, you can choose to give him the AC. And as long as, like a sentinel, as long as you are side by side, shoulder to shoulder, back to back, you're getting the AC.
I think
once they're further away, it would go down.
If that's how it works, I think the way I would adjust it is I would say it lasts at maximum until the end of your next turn. And it would end early if, for whatever reason, they move away from you within that time period. Like, that's the way I would do it, because if it lasts for that long, like, hypothetically, if I were to use those same wings that would pop out of the shield to protect me and deflect me, I would think they're no longer protecting him. Well, and I would also think that...
But see, that again, we're thinking about divine magic, and I don't think these ideas of the wings coming out and protecting you are what's happening. I think the idea is the wings come out and blast, just do the whip, and then the wings are gone. But that's why I'm thinking that where I would do it is, that's why, again, with the idea that as long as they're next to me, and if they walk away, they'll keep it until the end of my next turn. That's why I think, because it's divine magic, it should be the shield giving itself up, like giving its own, benefit up. Because the reason why this shield is a +5 is most likely, because I don't know what a tower shield normally is, but I think the +5 is.
I think a tower shield's at least a +3, because
right.
I don't know much.
And that's why I'm thinking, like, if you give up to the 2, that's essentially the divine magic's extra AC, which can then protect that person as an aura until they walk away. And the walking away is more like not walking away from you, but they're walking away from the source. So it can only give it to them and hold on to that connection
for so long.
And then it's like, you know what? I got to come back to my protector.
I get that.
So he says that your version is actually what they are intending for the wording.
Okay.
So the idea is that it will be a +2 to AC until the end of my next turn unless you walk away from me. That's what he is intending it. I still think that even with that intention, I do agree with you. That actually makes more sense in terms of it just being a sentinel move where you're basically, here's +2 because I'm giving you half my shield. So as long as we're side by side. So that's fine, except that... I mean, I would be pedantic about it because it's situational. Like if you're sentineling, it depends on who's way. But I'm being pedantic about that. I still think that, I think for High Point, I actually do like the idea, though, of being able to give them an aura AC boost rather than a sentinel AC boost. Just because the idea that you're deflecting the full amount of damage, if it works. Again, if they're back to back, you can't really do that. But the idea that you're deflecting all of that damage off them, I think that's more of an aura protection. And I kind of like the idea that it's one of those... Because imagine this too, for story purposes. Think about all the cool times in like kung fu movies and other like martial arts movies where it's like the two main guys and then they have to go back to back. Like maybe they weren't even buddies the whole movie, but then it's like it's everyone gets right and they're just like, and then it's like, you got this, you know, you like side by side. So imagine this situation where he's like, you got hit, boom, I give you that, and then I turn my back. So I get my full protection in this direction, you get your back, but you still get like the AC boost. So it's like, I could almost see that almost being the situation again. Instead of that whole huddle behind my shield, it's more of, I'm just going to give this to you so we can handle this situation. But if you walk away, that's only going to last for so long.
Right.
But again, okay. I think that's how the balance would have to be. If you're giving them the +2 for that amount of time, it has to be a magical +2. So it has to come away from you. You would lose that.
I mean, I do like that, you know. I mean, for me, I think that would work both magically and physically, you know, because if I was using the shield, protecting myself, and now I'm over here, like, I could have enough dexterity to bring it back if I need to.
And a tower shield is meant for that. Tower shield is meant for you and your buddies. So I think what you and Cosmic were talking about in terms of your description makes it a lot more. Makes a lot more sense in this than the physical use of it. I'm thinking because you're spending a charge. So here's my other thought. I'm spending a charge to do this. Like, you know, I'm like, I have my shield in front of me, and then to give you a plus AC, I'm essentially moving the shield over. But that's giving you full damage protection and, you know, and a plus to AC. It's like, that's where I'm. I think that's where it's losing. I think that's where it's losing.
I could see it. You do something like this specific one. You like smash it on the ground or something, and almost like shimmers, and then like a duplicate shield like kind of appears in front of them for a quick second, and that would even work really well with like almost like an ethereal duplicate shield that like protected them, that giving them that bonus to AC or whatever that like sits there with them. That way you're not like doing any of this or doing it, like it just is. It kind of like almost mirrors you, and it would even solve, you know, my mental problem of like, all right, because again, both of them mention these wings coming out and protecting one person or another. And for me, every time I think about that, I'm like, okay, if these wings came out to protect them, how are they gonna? But in that sense, it's like, oh, you got this ethereal shield out here protecting you, and now I need to use it for myself to protect myself.
But you also got to remember, you're asking where the wings are coming from, but remember, there are 3 sets of wings inside the shield. So because you spend 1 charge and the wings de-glow, you still technically have the other 2 wings. So the idea of saying that, like, the wings are over there so they're not protecting me.
Is that what he said? He said there are wings in the shield?
Yeah, you have the 3 charges represented by 3 glowing feathers on the inside. So you technically see 3 feathers inside. So every time you do a charge, one of the feathers stops glowing. So technically you do always have, and that's where I would think I was going with it, too.
My picture was they all came out of the same spot. But
well, and it would also be interesting, too, because, like, if you have that wing, like, visual where the wings come out of the shield and then envelop your buddy, you could also just call that, like, more like it, like, envelops them and then they have, like, a shimmering, like, armor, like mage armor, which is their +2.
Yeah, I like
and that's where, again, you don't have to give up the use of the shield to give them the +2. It's like a mage armor. And the same thing would happen with you. Like, these things come out, and I just imagine, like, more like the wings come out of the shield and like blast back the attack.
No, I can
blast back the person if they're in front, because they would like flap out in front of you.
Like a shockwave of energy comes out, which is why it wouldn't work for ranged personnel actually pushing them back.
Because it would only go a couple, right in front of them. And then you have like the healing aspect of it too. So yeah, so I like it. I mean, very small modification so far for working it in high point, but I do like this debate. I like the idea that you can use it both just as the shield's intended to, but you can have this hierarchy of divine magic. I mean, again, when you're dealing with a divine magic item, it's kind of limitless, right? You don't really have to worry too much about it necessarily being overpowered, because it can be overpowered, but the idea is that what's powering it gives it that extra credence that you can kind of do a little bit more than your standard, wand 3 charges.
Facts.
So let's go to the last one. The last option is that as a reaction to getting hit, so this is again once you've gotten hit again, you can spend 2 charges this time to sprout the feathered wings to knock the weapon out of the enemy's hand. So this will be, so you spend 2 charges, you disarm the enemy, you launch the weapon 30 or 50, 5 to 30 feet away. It's a 1d6 roll. So 5 to 30 feet away. and negating all would-be damage from that attack. The wings disappear after 1 minute. So off the bat, wings appear, knock the weapon out of the guy's hand, and no damage happens to you, but the wings stay for 1 minute. During that time, you can use reactions to parry further attacks from the same enemy, basically giving them disadvantage. Okay, so you sprout them, you disarm them, you negate all damage, and for 1 minute, so for one turn, for 1 minute, so...
That's 10 turns. Standard D&D rules. Each turn
6, 10, yes. So for the next 10 turns, if they pull another weapon on you, or if they just go fisticuffs, they have disadvantage on all their attacks.
So the way it looks like he's wording it is that it says during that you can use a reaction to parry further attacks, essentially giving them disadvantage.
Right.
So that means I have to use. So when you attack me, I have to use my reaction to give you disadvantage. Be like, hey, I'm about to hit you. I'm like, all right, disadvantage reaction. Now, which again, rules as written would mean you can only do that once per turn, unless you got some way to get additional reactions.
So the third effect was slightly edited after it was sent to us. They can copy and paste the update here. So this is the updated version. So as a reaction to getting hit, you can expend 2 charges to sprout feather wings to knock the weapon out of the enemy's hand, launching it 5 to 30 feet away. DM rolls a d6. And negate all would-be incoming damage from that attack. The wings last for 1 minute. For that 1 minute duration, these wings allow you to parry further attacks from all enemies within 5 feet of you, forcing them to have disadvantage on all attacks against you. I wanted that description more than this one. Thank you so much, Cosmic, because honestly, my first gut reaction when I was reading this was, why is that 2 charges when I can get a fucking healing boost or what was it, or not a healing boost, but reflect radiant damage, knock them back 5 feet. That is more powerful than being able to disarm them and having just a one-on-one parry fest with reactions. Mm-hmm. But this idea of 2 charges, knock his weapon out of his hand, and then for just 1 minute, you're just like...
And you're just fucking slapping him. It was just the person that you disarmed, but in this description, it's anybody within 5 feet.
Yeah, so if you get ganged on,
you're just like. Blah, blah,
I love that. No, that makes so much more sense. For that right there helps it for 2 charges.
Monk, dude, that would be. Although monks don't really mess with shields like that, but
bro, still. But what if you can just put this into a staff? Put this same concept into a staff. It doesn't have to necessarily be a shield, because you wouldn't have to necessarily, change the +5 bonus to armor class to a +3 attack and +3 damage, right? You can put that into a plus damage or attack instead of, or you could make it defensive. You could make it
I'm thinking just because monks have unarmored defense, put it into dexterity.
There you go. Yeah. So you could easily turn this into that. Your charge to be able to block, let's say even again, depending on how you wanted to word it, you could even say that when you expend the charge, time slows down, allowing you to fully block any incoming attack.
Some bullet time. Oh my god!
You see what I'm saying? You could easily just reword this.
I need.
Okay, so that's the edited part for one specific enemy. Changed all the enemies within melee range. So yeah, no, 100%. That changes it and makes it worth having the 2 charges, because the 1 charge, I would say you're knocking the weapon out of his hand, but you're not pushing him back. You're not so that whole thing of being able to just block enemies for 1 minute. That's cool. And then we're going to end with charges are regained by spending time to pray to the deceased dragon goddess. 1 hour for 1 charge. Charges emit a holy glow and become dim when expanded. 1 hour per charge. That's only a 3-hour charge time. That's basically a short rest. Think about that's basically a short rest.
I mean, yeah.
I know it's a high. I would almost want this to be daily. I would almost want this to be at sunrise, or some kind of harder. I don't necessarily think like you have to adventure to go do it to some shrine, but literally a 3-hour pep talk is a little.
The way if I were to adjust this, I would say something to the effect you can only get 1 of these throughout the day. You can only do
recharge
a 1 hour charge throughout the day to get 1 charge back. And then at night, if you spend 3 hours, you'll get all 3 charges back. or something like that. Or if you like start the morning, you know, in prayer to the goddess,
You know,
and
actually,
spend 3 hours, you can get all 3 charges back or something like that.
So that brings up a good point. What if it was just one per day? Imagine, so like realistically, imagine if it was one per day. You get 1 recharge per day, per sunrise, 1 recharge. That would make action
significantly change your rationing.
And action economy. That means, like, I mean, I know it's a late game item, but it would prevent tactical abuse, because realistically, if you gave me this item, I mean, hands down, you gave me this item, I'm spending 3 hours between every combat. I don't care if I'm in the middle of a dungeon. I can sit here for 3 hours. I got rations. I got 5 weeks worth of rations that I carry on my person. I can sit here for 3 hours and pray to a goddess and immediately get those charges back, battle after battle after battle. I can take a feat that allows me to get a full night's rest in 4 hours. And every long rest, I can recharge this and still get a full night's sleep, right? That's almost too much, especially when you can add in like another player that can change time and you can make 1 hour turn into 3. Like, there's a lot of ways that could be retrofitted to abuse. And it, not necessarily, it would be probably not with your setting in your gameplay, but to prevent the balance, like for balancing for high point, I almost want to, I mean, it's a little long. I will say it's a little long. But with my modifications,
I would say that if you're gonna do that, I would give additional avenues to get things back. Like, hypothetically, if one of your party members, if like this would be really helpful for you, or you're out of charges, whatever, and you've already used your recharge for the day, maybe a sorcerer or somebody could use some sorcery points. I would give up a spell slot to like power you up or something like that.
So I would totally be down for, like, if you visit like if you get 1 per day guaranteed, 1 recharge, and then if you go to a temple, maybe they'll like charge you a tithing, like, you know, donate to the church and they'll recharge it for you with a blessing. I would be down for something like that, because again, it's a divine item, so if there are clerics, you probably could be able to get it charged. Mm-hmm. I mean, I would even have it to where maybe like this would just be so specific, it would be dumb to put it in there, but I would put it in there because of this. An artificer paladin can recharge it.
Interesting.
If you had someone do a multi-class artificer paladin, I would then say if they are of that goddess, they'd be able to recharge it. Maybe once per day themselves. So you get 1 for the dawn, 1 from your artificer party member, and then 1 from a church.
The question is, would they still be following a dead god?
Like, why not? I mean, because
if their powers are like truly going out to the point where it's no longer coming into the world.
But again, you got to understand, like, first off, setting, right? Like, what are deities in the setting? But again, like you said, just because the goddess died doesn't mean the world ended. Who knows the goddess is dead? All these people that have been praying to her all these years, she's been locked up. She's never answered. I mean, if she has a following, it's going to be, and regardless, look how many religions still follow essentially dead teachings. Yes. The idea is that faith persists. And in my realm, I can answer that, because in High Point, if a god dies and people still pray, someone's going to step in and be like, oh, look at all these prayers no one's taken. So I'm just saying, like, there's that idea that someone's taken those faith points. Let's see. So that's it. So you can either pray and regain 1 charge, or get the benefits of the short rest, not both. The way I've always played, a short rest is 1 hour. Okay. It's meant to be tactically abused. Oh, so it's meant to be tactically abused. How else can they fight and win against the BBEG when the BBEG 1v1 a god? I mean, that's totally fair.
I love that answer. I absolutely love that answer.
And that's great, though, because you are planning for that. Like, you are giving them the tools they need, and whether or not they can put it together to abuse it. Because some people wouldn't try to. Some people would be very, very generous and be like, hey, I'm only going to use these when we absolutely need it. I'm the kind of player that are like, wait a second, it only takes 3 hours. Please, let's go. Like, I will abuse the crap out of that. But if you are planning on setting them up with a battle that needs it,
hey, I mean, it is super late game, so the majority of the stuff they're going to be interacting with is going to be fairly deadly. You know what I mean? So I'm 100% here for it. No, this is very sick. Let me read that message he said a second ago. He said you can either pray and... Oh, I see what he's saying. So you can't get a short rest without and get the benefits of the prayer. No, that makes a lot of sense.
So I have a question. So you have taken. Okay, so where is it? Blah 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 blah. Those are the chains, otherwise TPK.
And I'm even thinking, remembering this is a scale with this player's name on it that was gifted to them by this goddess's dying.
Right, and that's what I was trying to get back to, is because there was the description before where, after all of that, blah blah blah. Communication, touch the lesser, once 6 chains are broken, blah blah blah. The goddess uses some of her greatly diminished power to energy to save the party from a TPK via fall damage. Don't have a corresponding show this blesses.
Oh, yeah, I have
it. Item is one item. So the item I sent is one of the items which morphs from the scale at the moment of great need. So yeah, so they rescue this goddess. They get these scales that they hang on to. They don't. This one is will turn into a shield, but only when a player has on their saving throws and has failed one.
Now, the way I read that is after it transforms, it doesn't revert back. It should stay that way.
No,
right?
but the idea is that they get these scales, so they don't know. First off, they don't know they have this.
It's true.
And imagine if it took them all the way till the BBEG battle, like the battle with the BBEG, and that was when they finally lost a saving throw, and all of these scales just started popping off. Because think about it, like, what if they don't go down between now when they save the goddess and when they fight the BBEG? I mean, granted, they are probably. I mean, he beat a god. They are probably going to go down.
So to be fair,
but if they don't go
one
down
this
between,
was given to is likely going to be some sort of frontline fighter that actually uses
like a
shield.
paladin, yeah.
Right.
But it is just funny that, like, the idea is that they're going to be carrying these scales, and if they are good enough, they may never know what they're carrying until literally they need it.
That is very true.
And then the whole point of it being abusive doesn't even matter, because if they literally don't know what they are until they're in that battle, then it doesn't matter how many times they can recharge it, because they're not going to have a 3-hour sit down in the middle of a battle.
Very fair. So I'm very curious as to the location of this, because
Of the battle and where she was locked up.
Because number one, they're talking about fall damage. Again, makes me feel like it's somewhere in the material plane. You know, it's not in some like ethereal, pocket dimension or something like that. But it's some place where rules of physics, gravity, and there's likely a floor somewhere. So it's like I'm very curious what the setting behind a lot of this.
Well, I know there's islands, because he did talk about like the central island. So I think what it might be is like essentially the setting is a planet or just a space of islands, and each one has like the different things. So on one is probably where the battle happened, one's where she's kept, one is the original shrine. But again, I think it's an island situation, but I could be wrong.
I feel like kind of like, especially with a lot of the way he's staged a lot of his previous world building, the fact that the other god is literally buried, but in the material plane, like it's actually physically here. So to me, it would make sense that it is here, right?
No, absolutely.
And the additional fact that the magic from her has been leaking into the world this whole time, like it would again make sense that it's although it would make sense that I feel like some sort of wizard by now would have come and tracked the source of all magic to wherever this dragon is located.
Okay. So it used to be just a giant landmass that over the centuries and decades has come into islands.
Interesting.
So this was just a giant. So it's prime material plane, giant landscape. There was a giant battle here. She got imprisoned, and then over all of these tens of thousands of years, it slowly eroded away, and now you have a set of islands. That was once just a great sprawling landscape.
Okay, so with that being the case, I had some questions when we first were talking about this, about where this actually takes place. One of my questions is when scales fall off, like, what happens to them? Like, are these physical artifacts? Like,
right, usually when people die and the scales fall, because what it also said, what he makes it seem like is not only is he siphoning the magic, because he knows about her death and what would happen with, like, the things he knows all about, like her deal with the scales of people. But it's like, what? First off, I mean, what I'm really curious about is what is he siphoning power for? Like, what is the purpose of siphoning her power? Because it's not to create magic. We know that for sure. So he created or found this place, found a way to make these towers and these chains, and was able to bind her. So for what purpose? What's the point of it? Because if you were able to beat her, why do you need her magic? And then secondly, he must, all of this time have been collecting all of the scales of anybody who ever died, right? They just fall off of her. He must have done something with them. So yeah, that's my biggest thing is, like, what is the power siphoning for, and what did he do with all of the scales that would drop off of her?
Earlier, small amount of magic leak out.
Yeah, a small amount, just enough to create magic in the entire universe.
If that's the case, here's the deal. So magic came from this dragon oozing it into the world. The
Right, it's the chains that the guy created.
So that means that when this BBEG went up against this god in the first place, there was no magic in the world.
I was getting it.
Okay, so.
Well, wait, we don't know that though. We don't know what there was before time, like the time before time. The idea is the magic we know now, the magic that the prime material plane operates on now, is based on her magic. But we also have to understand that the BBEG must be as old as that battle. So, is that the point? Is he siphoning the magic to live forever? Because the whole point is he must be as old. What if he's also a dragon and we don't know about it? What if he's, like you said, siblings? What if it's a brother? Just saying, like, what if it's a son? You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of ways that this can go. But yeah, my two big questions: what's the power for? And what does he do with the scales? Because what is there? Yeah, why? That's also a good question. How did he take over? I mean, obviously these are all like in-game questions, but yeah, how did he win the battle? Was there a different type of magic back in the day, or was that a pure battle of strength? Like, because he said he couldn't kill her because of the lack of strength.
Yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to get to.
The withered, fallen off scales just remain on the ground as they pile up with each creature's death to take up space in the barriers, reducing the area inside. So that's the whole suffocating. The plan is that the BBEG brought magic from his native plane to aid him with...
wait, say that again?
So the plan is that the BBEG brought magic from his native plane to aid him. With the thought that I have magic, you don't, I have the advantage. So he brought magic, captured her, siphoned her, I'm assuming, to get more magic, so just a power-hungry BBEG. But unbeknownst to him, he let out magic into the world. Or unbeknownst to him, maybe he wanted magic to be, like, for everyone. Maybe he thinks he's the hero of his story. Maybe he thought that magic should be available to everybody, and he thought he was doing a good service. Who knows?
So, I'm curious because here it says that the campaign's main BBEG once did battle and defeated but not killed due to a lack of strength. So when the BBEG went up against this god, did he know that he did not have the strength? Or was it just like, oh my gosh, I don't have the strength, I need to figure out something?
And that's the thing too. Did he intend to kill her? Was the capture and chains an afterthought because he couldn't kill her?
Yeah.
What was it? Were the chains a way to stop her, then kill her, and then realize he can't kill her even chained up? So maybe he was trying to siphon the magic until she was weak enough to kill.
Yeah, maybe that's kind of what I'm thinking.
I'm assuming that the BG is like, if he had magic from where he's from and he came here, just like, I'm assuming that that's just more of he's traveling to gain more power. And no matter how he gets it, maybe where he's from, maybe those chains are like how he's gotten power from other places, and he just moves from one, plane of existence to the next.
Why does this guy give me Kane the Conqueror vibes?
Right. The BBG possesses a typical poses as a typical human, but it's a disguise. I just haven't figured out. He hasn't picked up the plane where he's from yet.
Got you.
He's exhausted his native magic and didn't have enough to finish the job. That's why he wasn't strong enough.
Gotcha.
So it took all of his magic just to get her to this point, or get her to a weakened state when he couldn't kill her. Devise this idea.
That also poses like, did he devise this whole chains barrier thing while she was defeated but not dead?
Right?
Like,
yeah. Or was this like how? Yeah. Did he get here and then he realized he couldn't kill her? And then the other thing is that he's depleted his magic, so that means that he doesn't have access to his original plane. Wherever he came from, he doesn't have access to keep pulling it. So he brought it with him, but it's gone now. Just like that eventually in the future, magic will be gone once the goddess is dead. So in this place, magic does not survive. Magic does not persist in this existence of this world.
It is not perpetual in and of itself.
It has to be brought and will always
generated.
be extinguished eventually. So that's fascinating.
That is very interesting.
I love this this whole setting concept. It's just it's fascinating.
It's very good. I want to poke at it so much. I want to know so many things about it.
Right.
No, this is very good. No, I like the mindset and the path and the direction this takes you. When you're thinking about how to interact with magic in your world, when you're thinking about how to interact with gods in your world, when you're thinking about how to do a lot of different things, you can approach it from the non-standard way.
Right.
Think about Star Wars. Magic is just intrinsically exists. The midi-chlorians are just in the air, right?
Right.
No matter what you do, you're not gonna get rid of it, right? Most. Harry Potter, magic just exists, right?
Yeah, it's just a perpetual state of existence. It's just whether or not you choose and have the ability to interact with it. So think of it as a spell slot. Killing the goddess would use an 8th level spell slot, but by the time she was beaten, he didn't have a spell slot for it. Instead, he went with Siphoning Imprisonment, being a 5th level spell slot by comparison. Huh. So his power abilities got her to this point.
Got you.
But it also does show that he doesn't have a way to replenish that like anybody else would. Otherwise, he'd have been back to do the job over. He would have been able to kill her by now. Yeah. So he's also locked away.
I do remember it saying that siphoning would be slowly killing her for thousands of years or something.
Yeah, it's supposed to just eventually kill her. So it's I guess that was the idea too. Is he just wants to cleanse her? Well, and then it's what's the reason? What was his motivation? Is killing her going to help him in some way? Because the other part is if you think about it, if his goal is to kill her, we helped him because we freed her, and she used the last of her power for us, and then she's dead. So if his absolute goal is to have her dead, we actually, unbeknownst to him, well, she wouldn't have died if he freed her because she wouldn't have used the last of her energy to save us and do all that. But the idea is we helped speed up that process. So what was his end goal? Why did he need her dead? Because if the whole end goal was to have her dead, does that mean was her dead or her alive what was stopping him from going home? Does he think that he can take over as the god? What are these motivations? Why would you go after the creation god if you don't get anything from it?
Additionally, I just had this thought. I swear I had it earlier, but it was, if she's now dead, what happens to the new people that are born?
Well, like he said, just because the creator dies doesn't mean the world they created dies. She was just the physical representation of it, but she was not the cause or...
But didn't the scales that grew on her actually have effect on the people?
No. It was more of again, she's the physical representation. They had their names. It was kind of like a ethereal birth certificate, and reincarnation was represented by growing in the same spot. But it wasn't because she was alive that those were happening. She was just the physical manifestation.
And
she was
why it ended up...
So once she dies, people still born and die. It's just there's nothing to represent it. There is no more birth certificate.
Interesting. Okay.
That's fascinating, though.
I get that. That's crazy.
So this actually good little segue with that, because you brought up a good point here towards the end of really hammering home good builds and good balancing, especially when it comes to creating items. And I wanted to kind of talk about like your thoughts on, like, it's one thing to create cool items like this, like create things for players to go use. I mean, I've created a lot of like weapons and items that just either are super situational or are just in general good things that I want players to play with. But then of course there are the other types of items that I create, or that, excuse me, the other types of items that we create to help push the story. Essentially, whether it's to give the BBEG something to use to accomplish a goal, whether it's something to put in the background to make the characters desire, even though they're not really sure what it is, or whether it's just something to entice the players to accomplish a new goal that they would not have normally otherwise, right? Like making a book part of the plot line, like making them need a very specific piece of knowledge, and not needing it to advance the story, but knowing of it gives them the opportunity of, we can go to this new place, get this information, and we'll have this whole, like, you put it in there. Yeah, you put it in there, not, you create these items not to give them something to hold on to and replicate the use of, but those items that you create to push their plot and push, like, give them reasons to do things. So I'm really curious about like your thoughts and what you've done with that, because I know a lot of my stuff, like the things that I've put in there. I mean, Vixie's campaign, started with the necklace. I mean, literally, I threw that in on a backstory. She wanted to just game a backstory real quick with another gamer friend of ours because they wanted to tie their stories in. And through that backstory, I made mention of a necklace, and that spawned a 4-year campaign for her to go track that thing down.
Sometimes it be like that.
Yeah, and it's changing the entire universe because of it. Like, the entire realm is literally at odds right now because she did that. Literally, I just threw this thing in there because I'm dumb, and I'm like, hey, that would exist right there. She may have seen it, and I rolled, and she saw it.
Everything happens for a reason.
It does. The dice told the story. I love that.
100%, man. Like, it's like, to be honest, the things that happen by accident are almost always my favorite.
Yeah.
Right? And they are because they happen so organically. I'm not trying to make them. I have no agenda. They just are. And so those things are the things that I desire to develop and do the most with, as I've told you before, like, my players guide the story. They guide everything that happens. What they interact with is what exists, right? So a lot of the times, especially at character creation, one of my big things that I do with all my players is, and this is not all the time, it depends on the group that I'm with, but for the most part, I like to give each player something that no other player has had or will have.
Oh yeah,
right?
Always a favorite of mine.
And it's one of those things where it's like, this is something, and I, as a player, love character synergy. So I kind of talk with them and work with them on like what they desire to do with their character. If they have a character that really
I talked about
stealth,
about this last week.
Give you a cloak that you start with that makes you like boss at stealth, or like, and whatever this item is, I like the fact that it's something that you keep with you, something you can level up with you, depending upon the way you use it.
And it's not something that everybody else can buy.
Exactly. It's something that like you feel attached to, and some feel that it's cool. And so, some people are, people who like a lot of magic items. I want all the cool things to make me like Batman, but other people's like, I just want my one thing. This is like my go-to thing. And so, there's a lot of cool aspects about creating, building, and making items. And I'm not gonna lie, I get so much inspiration from social media, from movies, from other stuff. And sometimes I just want to make something because I think it's freaking cool and I want to play with it, And so sometimes I'll do that, but a lot of the times it's just what is going to be fun to interact with. What is going to...
Always a good rule of thumb.
And I like how you put like driving the story, but I like to drive my players. Right.
And that's really what I'm talking about. Is creating that motivation.
For sure.
Cosmic says that going back to our previous comment, the best part about his storyline is that all the while, unbeknownst to them, they are helping the BBEG.
I do like that.
The idea is
That's-
that all along, he just
the
hasn't worked on
BBEG
all of the
stuff.
motivations yet. So the BBEG is still in working stage, so he hasn't got
sure.
all the motivations. But I'm liking the build. I like so far the build.
You could do a lot with it. Like you can take his motivation, especially with the way I see the world building going. Like he could do so many cool things, with this.
And then remember the tidbit about the telepathy crystal. So where they have to go take it, that crystal that's in the center island that can make a link to the goddess, but is also
Yes.
where you have to touch all of the
To
artifacts.
destroy them.
So it does get destroyed. The shrine's destruction breaks it. So when you free her, but it will make a comeback in the form of one of the offensive items that he had mentioned. So he had
Those
defensive.
6 items.
So he had defensive and defense. So the crystal actually becomes one of the offensive
One of the
ones.
offensive items. Okay.
A staff encrusted with the crystal shards and empowering it. So that crystal will become a staff. And that was a crystal that used to be telepathically linked to the goddess, which brings up a whole lot of potential.
And it used to destroy artifacts. Like,
Yeah,
you know how
that's a
rare it
whole-
is to be able to destroy artifact type.
Like
That. Okay.
legit. Can you
Okay.
imagine if that thing had 3 charges in it,
Dove to the crystal staff.
and every charge was a level of disenchant or dispel magic. So one charge is level 1, and all the way up to 3 charges at once is level 3, or level 5. So it's 1, 3, 5.
Yeah.
But imagine having a staff of this thing where it's not only can you maybe speak with anybody who touches the other end of the staff, maybe you can speak telepathy with them, but also imagine being able to just touch things, and if you expend a charge, you can just be oh, that's a nice sword. What is that? A +2? Nice short sword. And then just walk off. Just you're zapped. You're done.
Oh,
that would be intense though. That could be a fun weapon.
There are so many. So I had an idea for, because I was telling you I wanted to create a samurai class. Well, one of the samurai classes that I wanted to create was basically an anti-mage or an anti-magic user, somebody who stands off against wizards. As a lone fighter. And so a lot of what he does, a lot of his stances, the purposes of them are to reflect back the magic that is cast at them.
Interesting.
My mentality for a samurai class in general is reaction based. So as fighters, you get a whole bunch of extra attacks. Well, as a samurai, you would get a whole lot of reactions. And what you would do with your action, you would just change your stance. And your stance would allow you, would basically determine the types of reactions you can take that turn, right?
Interesting.
So, if you have a lot of people in close quarters, you can go into a very physically defensive stance. One of them could literally cast the spell shield, defensive magic.
And then you can have things like counter,
elements.
like counter attack. So you could have reactions that would
Yes.
actually, counter attack or move. So it's you can do a counter attack which will hurt them, or you can counter attack which will deflect them and move them 5 square or a
Yes.
square or 5 feet.
You could legit I have this idea where you can absorb a spell into your blade and then potentially keep it and use it in your next attack, or throw at
Or
higher
just
levels and
okay.
do different things with it. But it's just the idea of having this warrior that is a melee fighter, and he can do melee fighting stuff, but even magic users, you don't mess with them like that.
I would like that. That would be fun.
I wanna build it so bad, and one of these days I'll bring it in and see what you guys think. But
I like that. Let's go over here. Now that we're done with that, there we go. That's a little better. That's a little nicer. We're just on a different camera now, so we'll look a little bit better now, and we don't need the camera anymore.
But no, that's it's very cool. I like some of this stuff. Cosmic, I'm very excited for you to send us your next item.
Yeah, I'm kind of liking this. I'm kind of liking starting up with a review. Yeah. So going back to the main topic, because you've experienced this quite a bit, where I've thrown, I think, you a couple different items, or you've at least experienced it. Not just the necklace with Vixie's campaign, but even with your campaign with Dobbed. I mean, we started off with 2 items really. One of them was kind of a 50-50. One of them was one that we created partially for you to just use and kind of learn and work with, but then it was also a big plot point for me. Like, it was a big thing that to drive the storyline, which was your father's staff. And then the second one was, of course, absolutely pure plot based. Now, you kind of wrote this one in yourself, but I obviously added things into it at liberty. So you wanted to have the backstory where Dovd was essentially following in his father's footsteps. He got his father's journal in the mail. And of course, once you said that you wanted to, like, you were given his journal and you wanted to follow him, the first thing that went to my mind was Supernatural with the boys with their dad's journal. And obviously not the same thing because his was more informational and reference material. But that was the mindset where you got this and you were like, what? Why do I have this? Like, this, he was never without this. So that was a big motivation for you, and you wanted to use that as your character's motivation. So of course I took that as, obviously, well, what's in it? So I had to fill it out a little bit. But, I've tried to add things that aren't directly related to what you wanted, but would be in that book, and giving you those branching points out.
And stuff like that, I think, is so cool, especially when you have the diversity and the flexibility to, like, put things in when needed. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be all fleshed out, like, the second the item's in your hand. A lot of it is, like, discoverable along the way,
Right. I mean, because we've gone over this. I mean, Dov has read that book cover to cover. It's like, we know Dov, the character, knows everything in it, but contextually, does he know what's in it, right? Like, names of places, names of people, descriptions of things your dad did. You know them by heart. But until you're somewhere and you're like, wait. That's the tree. That's the tree. And then, and to me, this is where, again, it's another fundamental, we always go off topic, but this is like another fundamental concept of, like, where I differ in my play style, especially as a DM from D&D, especially with people like our buddy who DMs a little bit. This is like one of those big, I think, rules of mind or sets of mind for DMs. And it's that generalized concept between, what do you believe your players need to know before you start? Now, and then this is both mechanics as well as story, right? There are some DMs who think, well, hey, you read every book and you need to know your character, you need to know how it works, you need to know all the mechanics, I'm just here for the story. And then there's DMs who are like, no, I'm here to fill everything out for you, ask all your questions. But that also happens on the storyline, right? There are some DMs who like to write everything out. They want the players to be more mindful of, like, what has previously happened. Some DMs will even do pre-write-ups, like, beforehand. They'll give you like that. I'm not a huge fan of those, just because that's not how I trigger memories. It's not how I get into gaming. D&D is not a choose your own adventures book. It is a interactive, like, storyline. But again, I'm the type that where I am fully okay as a DM to answer all these questions, and I totally understand why some DMs who just would prefer their players, and again, it's all your gaming group, right? Because there are plenty of gaming groups that I've been in where it's like, you guys really aren't paying attention to anything and just really expect me to do all the work all the time.
Yeah.
I understand those are annoying, but the thing is like, it's still, you are the storyteller, you're the author. I still feel responsible for making sure that those kind of, the details are there. But that's where the difference, where we could have gone over, I could have given you everything in that book and just given you all the pre-done stuff, right? But just like in real life, where, like, we were just talking about that example where it's like, what's in the book, but until you understand when you need it, those are the times I want to step in as DM. Like, I don't want to tell you every page of that book and write out all of this stuff, because it would be fun and you would still get to those conclusions. But in my respect, or in my concept of being a DM, that's not the experience that Dovd would be having, right? Dovd would have those moments of, like, hey, you've just stepped into this town. Go ahead and roll me a dice real quick. Roll me wisdom. Like, something seems familiar about this place. Like, the way that this building is, like, maybe you've seen a drawing of it. That's, to me, that is so much more fun than you being like, have I seen this place before? But like, yeah, it's in your book. You know what I mean? Because we know everything about the book. Like, you've told me about this place. No, I know it's in the book. Like, it's fine to be like that, but I look at it from the experience of your character and the player, and I like to find those moments like that bring you and your character together. And it's like that whole thing where I'm trying to describe something, give you that opportunity to be like, hey, maybe there's a connection over here. That's when that matters, right?
So, and I know I've had issues with this in the past, but I think that one of the things that I really enjoy about D&D and that got me into it in the first place is the fact that I get to embody a character. I get to be this character, and like this character leads the way, and I'm no longer thinking as, myself, as Kage. I'm thinking as Dabbed, or I'm thinking as Vemlo, or I'm thinking as, Fang, or whoever it is that I'm going to be in that moment. And, when I'm coming up to these places and these situations, like, I have a hard time a lot of the times because I don't actually get to be them, and the thoughts that are running through Dobbs' head are not necessarily the thoughts that are running through my head.
Right.
And so there'll be times where I will be stuck, and it'll be like, all right, how do I get from my thoughts to his thoughts, right? How do I put myself in his shoes? And sometimes, like, working through that is a big part of the enjoyment of it, you know what I mean? And it's
but also sometimes that's also where the DM comes in, because that's part of my job. Is it's your character and your build, but it's also sometimes my job to, again, fill in that narrative gap, because I do feel like there are sometimes DMs who are either overzealous with or unwilling to play the player's characters when needed, right? Like, I know some DMs who are just like, no, I say what every character does, period. So you just let me know what you want and I'll tell you how it happens. And then there are other DMs who are like, no, I don't do anything with your character. You tell me everything about your character, right? And it's like, I feel like the real good balance is when it makes sense for your characters to take action, to be intentful, then it's really up to the player. But there are times where I feel like, as a DM, you could be like, hey, as you're walking through, you're looking over here, you're looking over there. Like, that's not taking control of your character. That's not being like, oh, I'm not going to have you, like, do something your character wouldn't do. But those moments of being able to guide that narrative and kind of take the character away from you for a moment and be like, yeah, well, as you're looking around, you would look over here. Now, you could be like, no, I wouldn't look over there. I'd be like, you wouldn't walk in and look left and right, like and honestly, I've played with players like that. I've played with players who make those cutscenes or the things where like, okay, and then you would do this. I wouldn't do. There would be no way. It's like, dude, it's just your character isn't always, like perfectly situationally aware, and it's like sometimes, again, both as a DM and a player, you have to accept that you are that character. You are playing that character when the intentful actions are necessary. But there's a lot of that leniency that really that character is also part of the DM's narrative, right?
And I think a lot of the times you're right that a lot of people forget that, okay, yes, this may be my character and this may be your world, but the truth is this is our story. You and I are coming together to build something together, and like we want to help each other do so, you know what I mean? And so in the same way that I like to give my players agency to narrate things that happen in the world. If I didn't specifically say there's a coffee mug on the table, you can just narrate, I pick up a coffee mug on the table. You're in a bar, like there's probably going to be
as long as it's not so drastically derailing of the situation.
And I think the same thing is true for DMs and characters. As long as you're not like trying to change the way my character is perceived, right? If I'm a proudful half-orc and say I roll a 1 and you say I trip and fall on my face, maybe I don't want to be perceived that way. Maybe I would like to narrate my natural one in a different way, a way that can still say the same thing, can still articulate how, hey, this thing happened, but it's not necessarily, making me look like a turd face, you know what I mean?
Right. And contextual, right? Always contextual. Like, yes. If you're just in the middle of town and the DM just wants to be a dick because you are being this prideful jerk and they just want to have everyone laugh at you, that doesn't make any sense. But it's like, I would totally be willing to, like, again, if you're just, in the middle of town and you roll a 1 to do something, I would be more lenient, but if it's like you're being a prideful dick and you're near like a water and you're making fun of someone who couldn't jump over the stream and you roll a 1, you're goddamn right you're falling your ass in that water and you're gonna eat your words. But that's the thing is that's the reality, right? That's that
Yeah.
irony of the reality where it's like if you're sitting there in a situation where you're talking a big game and you roll a 1, yeah, you're gonna eat your words. But if it's just that whole thing of like, again, if you're just with that DM who just wants to have it out for you because they don't like your character, they don't like that you took that situation, that's just one of those difficult situations you have to work with. But yeah, you know, and again, trying to go back to our topic here of the night, but going into that concept of it is the story, right? And this is where I think it is good to have a clear line divided between the types of things you add. These could be magical items. These could be, just plot items. They could be, things, again, that you put in to make the players strive for more. Because, it's one thing to just create a cool magic item. It's one thing to make some armor. It's one thing to make an item, like you were saying, for your character to have and grow with. Those are all great and nice, especially because you get to see how they're going to use them. And it's just fun. It's fun to see your creation get used in ways you didn't think of. But I think that there is a unique place that a lot of DMs don't talk about when they create things, which are, I'm not creating this for the sole purpose for you to have it, for you to play with it, for it to be cool. I'm creating it for a different purpose. As in, again, maybe like what we were talking about, like the robe of accumulative knowledge. When we were talking about Cosmic's other item last week. That's why when we were talking about that, I had specifically said I would throw that onto an NPC. Not with the intent that it's going to be a player item to use, but because as they see it, every time they get the description of it, it'll look cool. It'll be dope. They'll see it be used. They'll see it in action, and they'll want it. And the only way to get it is to kill the BBEG. That's its goal. I created that item specifically to make you want to take him out. Yes, it's a cool item. Yes, you can have it and use it. But that's not the same as creating a sentient sword that will, upgrade with your skill sets. It's an item or like, again,
it's a seed.
Yeah. Kind of like, again, like when in your book, like throwing the prophecy inside your dad's journal that you never, saw up until it was pointed out to you. Things like that, like meeting the person that Dobbed is currently talking with in game. Certain people, like I put these things there and you can't do anything with it. You can't go to his world and his home yet, but it's possible. You now know that ship is there. That ship is literally this object. This ship is not for you to own and have and go explore, but that ship is there for players to know about and go, wait a second, that takes me somewhere I want to go.
And again, like I said, it has function. It's like, I came down here, there's this prophecy, like, say I never followed the prophecy. Say I was like, whatever, it's a prophecy, so what?
You never would have found it.
And it would still be there.
Still be there.
It would still do what it does. It would still be its purpose and function, and all of it would be there for that reason. Now, the reality is, Cloak of the BBEG, it's great, but if your players never see it, it doesn't have its own function,
Yeah.
And so I do think, like, you're very right, like, a lot of these times, like, almost like the mantle, sometimes these things are almost created out of a vacuum, out of like a necessity for something. Like, I don't know where this prophecy came from, but this prophecy needed that ship to exist in order for it to be able to function.
Yep.
Right? And boom, there it is.
Exactly. And that's, it's just interesting because sometimes, I don't know. Sometimes it's interesting to walk that line almost to try to create one that does both. But I have learned that it's very difficult to do that and properly balance it, because to create something that's both useful regularly, but also keeping in mind that it has a bigger like purpose, is a hard balance, right? Because it's one thing to give like, a weapon that has all these cool features, but also will kill one, the only thing that can kill the BBEG. Mm-hmm. That's too easy though, right? But how do you make something that is both cool and playful and you want to use it, but also makes the character want to push to do a certain task, right? Like how do you accomplish both of those? And I've tried before, like even in the campaign that you were in with way back early on the Faction 5 campaign. You guys had that big massacre in the warehouse that y'all did. And through that, you guys were actually, surprisingly enough, going after dragon scales. and one of them had broken and was turned into a makeshift knife. You basically took like a broken dragon scale, attached it to a piece of bone, and it was basically a makeshift knife. And through the use of it, one of the characters had found out that it had anti-magical properties. So like it would like, you know, for like, I think the character that found out is because one of the enemies had it try to cut him, and he has a magical cloak that auto mends, like mends itself, and it wasn't mending itself. Like it was a permanent cut in his cloak that never happens. And he found out that, yeah, that the dagger is partially magical, but it's also an anti-magic dagger now. And I put that in there because partially it was kind of like a cool item. I wanted to see what y'all would do with it, and to see how you guys would react to it. So it was kind of just one of those situations, but it also was a kind of like a what's the word I'm looking for? It was a plot device or a key to fix a plot point elsewhere for another character. So specific, it was for Lulcypher's character. He was playing Crow, and it was meant for him, but any of you could have messed with it.
Right.
But he was part of the party, so everybody could have interacted with it. But the whole point was, it was a cool item. I wanted to see what you guys would do with it. But it's also part and partial to his storyline, because he was going to get he had an offer. Some prince basically wanted to use his services to overthrow his dad. And the biggest problem about the king is, the big deal there was that the king was known to be fluent in magic, not like a mage or anything, but fluent enough in magic. But also it was known that he was just extremely lucky. Like everyone, like anybody close to him didn't believe anything. Like everyone believed it, you know, he was like just the best, you know, smartest, everything. But everybody in his family knew that it was just pure luck. But no one could figure out like why
how it was happening.
Like I mean, this is the kind of guy who, you know, he had 2 of his wives die because they accidentally drank his poison drink, and one of them was the one who poisoned it.
Well,
but it's
legit.
Just so
legit.
Long story short, the thing is he has a few magic items that he's collected that basically help him out. One of them boosts, basically it's a luck item, so it basically gives him uncanny luck. And then there's another one that is a like a personal like anti-magic like shield kind of. So essentially just basically orients on him, so he can't really be the target of a magic spell, which kind of is odd for a lot of mages who are like, I can't kill this guy from afar. What the fuck? He also has the luck the luck, and then he has one other one which was can't remember off the top of my head, but he had one more magic item. So he just had all these magic items that were basically just
happened to be
he collected them for this purpose, and that's how he's been ruling this whole time. So the whole point was, with Crow being a trickster demon, the prince basically wanted to make some deals and overthrow the dad, and that was all going to be on Crow. Like that was the whole purpose. You're a trickster demon. This is the character you wanted. You wanted to just create a level 18, so go at it.
Figure it out.
And the idea was you have these people who want your powers. How are you going to fulfill it? And it was on him. Like that's the gameplay, right? That's the gameplay I designed for that character, or for that build. And so he had the ability to make deals and do all of that and use his demonic powers, but I threw him this dagger for the very specific purpose that it's an anti-magic dagger. It's quite literally the only item that would be able to
take care of business.
Like if you were to just try to walk up and stab the king, you'd most likely fall and trip on your own dagger because of his luck. If you tried to use a magical dagger to get through that and ignore that, his anti-magic shield would render it useless, and then you'd still trip and fall on it. This is probably the only dagger in existence that can get past his magical barriers. So the prince doesn't know Crow has it. And in fact, Crow almost didn't take it. At the very end, he finally had a last minute, like, I'm just going to pocket that. And then but he didn't know at the time that would link, because he had only gotten the offer right before he split up with the party. So he got the offer, happened to find this dagger, and I planned all of that to be that way. I wanted him to find it. I wanted him to use it, but I didn't want to railroad it into his pocket.
Right.
So the whole point was, it's going to be in this battle that had 6 of you versus 12 enemies. You guys massacred them, by the way, like literal slaughter. I mean, like literally, the town thinks that it was a serial killer, like gang murder. Like this was not a brawl gone bad. People actually, there was a murder investigation in that entire town for months. Like, you guys haven't gone back there, but that whole town is like...
It's a level 18. Like, I mean...
Like...
There's danger zone happening.
Yeah, so that was really fun. But yeah, so the whole point was to drop that in that fight and get it introduced to the group. But you guys had actually talked about who was going to take it, and Lorana and Ness, Vixie's character, almost took it. But he happened to just... decide to take it, and I'm just like, thank you, because that's really was meant for you. But that's what I love about it. I love throwing that out there, but not telling them who it's for. It's the whole point.
Yeah.
Is because that's how it would happen. Like, that's the real world. Like y'all are in a group, and if someone decides, I want to take that, well, guess what? You're gonna get to that king, and then you're gonna find out, oh, that dagger would have been really helpful right now.
Super useful.
But that's the idea. I don't want to make a hard Dark Souls like game. But I don't mind making a game that has a challenge, like you can miss a key item. Like, and you can soft lock, you can hard lock yourself. You can want, and again, because I don't set the goals, right? I don't say this is what you're trying to accomplish. You soft and hard lock yourself. You can set a goal that you can in turn render incompletable. That is something I actually kind of like. I don't necessarily suggest. I wouldn't normally suggest this for DMs because not only is it complicated, it pisses people off. But when you have the idea of an open world where the players choose their path, when they choose their end goal, those hard and soft locking yourself out of those end goals is part of that whole experience, right? Like, if you want to be the most powerful mage, if that's like your goal, I want to go start a mage college and I'm going to go take over and I'm just going to do all of this stuff. If you do something, piss off a god and they render you magicless, that's not me fucking up your game. You pissed off a god and they rendered you magicless. Like, you could have been turned into a non-magical, creature. Like, I'm just saying, like, there's so many ways that you can undo what you want. But then that just, to me, that leads to what's your newest goal then? Like, what do you want? Do you want your revenge now? And that's just that whole thing of like, I don't like railroading people into their own storylines. I want them to discover their own ways, and the world will react in kind. If you want to get into a place and you lose a key, I didn't work a back door unless it made sense. And I'm not going to just tell you there's a back door. You have to go find one, right? Like,
or go make one.
Exactly. And that's that whole thing. But
and I like that for the most part. I think that as a DM, you see that there are places for, hey, I didn't see this, I didn't understand this, I didn't know this, versus, hey, I'm gonna do whatever the heck I want to do and screw the consequences.
Yeah.
Right? Because those types of situations, I don't want to say need, but pretty much they need some kind of natural consequences, because the world we interact with is not really fun if it doesn't have consequences. Like,
yeah.
think about even though the mindset of the Matrix, the original Matrix was perfect, there was no issues. Nobody had anything that was challenging them, that was
right.
hard
They rejected perfection.
If you can just do whatever you want, if everything's like at the tip of your fingers and you don't have to try, like, that's not enjoyable. So like having to go up against something, having the potential to fail is where a lot of the benefit and the value of success even comes from.
Right. No, I agree. And that's where I think when you create these items, create all the items you want, create the cool things for people to use, but also remember that some items are worth it just to inspire them to go do something. And this can be anything. This can be go after somebody. It can be to gain enough money for something. It can be to travel to a place. Like I said, like make a book. Make a book that has information that will help them, but isn't required for them to continue. Give them the option to go there, but at the end of it, make that, whatever you created, make it progress their overall growth, not just something that they can use in battle or, a one-time use thing, right? Make it something to where it's like that whole experience, like, led to progression in the story. We have some more stuff from Kozak. So going back to his world. So he says that after the goddess dies, so this is after they've rescued her essentially, and she gives them their items. After she dies, All of the withered scales remain. So these are the scales that previous people had died.
Okay.
But after the party's blessed scales morph into their customized items, so over time after they've all experienced their close near death experience and all of their things change up, morph into their customized items. Should they revisit the goddess's resting place, they will see the wizard scales from the post-campaign Zodiac Tower dungeon. The Zodiac Tower is the 15-floor dungeon. One encounter equals one floor, based on creatures from the Chinese zodiac, with 13 floors for resting, or with three floors for resting. So 15 floors. It's based on the Chinese zodiac. 3 of the floors are for resting. The 15th floor outdoors is with an echo or shade or living memory of the goddess back when she was in her prime. The party fights it, and it will be a reenactment of the ancient battle between the goddess and the BBEG 10,000 or tens of thousands of years ago. Beating the living memory lets the remaining party members ascend to godhood themselves.
And this is the 15th, like the last layer of this tower?
Yeah, so the last layer. So you have to get through all the other layers, and then you have to defeat the goddess, and then you can ascend to godhood. So you know what that... Okay, so I'm going to just let you know right now. That little tiny piece of knowledge makes me wonder... Like, I know you already have the idea that he's from, like the BBEG is like a BBEG from, like, a different place. But it's like, that almost makes me wonder, like, was he actually evil? Because, like, he beat her but couldn't kill her. If you beat her, her old image, you somehow ascend. So I'm wondering, was that what he was trying to do? Like, was he just trying to ascend? Or is he a different type of god?
Well,
and setting up the ascension.
This final battle is the reenactment of that battle. That battle could not have been for this unless because we'd have to know a little bit of history of, like, the creation of this Zodiac Tower. Was it her that created it? Was it created because of the events that occurred that led to the tower in the first place? Like,
well, that's what I'm saying. It's like it's fascinating concept behind, like, again, just this the narrative concept behind what you can do with that. Like this tower that at the end of it you essentially have to take the role of the BBEG in order to ascend to godhood. Like, you have to take her role or take another role as a god, but why would you have to follow in the foot? You know what I'm saying? Like, the simple fact of when you add in, you have to follow in the footsteps of the BBEG. You don't have to protect her. You have to kill her. Like, you have to do what he did. So it's like...
Interesting.
So, like, you could, like... You ascend to godhood, but, like, are you resetting the cycle? Like, or is that going through the tower? Is that, like, resetting a new, like, creation where she's... Like, is that, like, you know what I mean? Or did he... Like, again, did the BBEG...
become a dragon, and now you got some scales that change with the people that are born on the
Well,
earth.
and all remaining party members, like, go to a godhood. And he says the reenactment is more metaphoric or symbolic rather than literal. Okay. So it's just more of you have to be an entity based off of her in order to earn the right of godhood.
Got you.
Still interesting, though. Still a very interesting way to do that. Yeah, no, this was fun. I like this. I think doing, like, a homebrew review, if not the start of every episode, I think just doing a homebrew review, at least just, like, even on Mondays is kind of fun. If we can get more, like, Cosmic, if you keep sending them in, we'll keep doing them, and hopefully we'll get more viewers sending some stuff in, because that'll be a lot of fun. Yeah, it doesn't look like we got a huge bump in viewership for being in Just Chatting, which is probably a good thing for our first time.
It's round one.
Let's see, Cosmic. Of the Shield's 3 effects, which one do you think would either be the most often used or is the most useful in any given situation? So, the way that you wrote them out, I think that the most often used would probably be the first one, which is the personal protection. The second would probably be the last one in terms of, like, you're surrounded. Just because for most party players, in my experience, most people aren't that coordinated and tactical. The second use of being able to protect your buddy, as written as you guys discussed it, I don't see many players benefiting from or utilizing.
Unless
because most aren't tactfully aware.
Unless you have, like, set up a a track record of, hey, me and this other player, we fight together.
Yeah,
and like we
totally
do this, and like we're back to back. Like
makes perfect sense.
Like,
I think the way that I wrote mine, like the way where you give the AC to the other person and you kind of take the AC away. I think that would be more utilized in my realm. The first and the second one would be more utilized just because that would be slightly more tactical. But again, I really think the first one's probably the most used because realistically, being able to push someone back, negate the damage, and reflect it back, that right there, I mean, being able to do that 3 times in battle, because you can just do that 3 times every time you get hit.
Second question, I really think number 3 is
the most useful.
That is most useful in any given situation.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Because you can do so much with that. It lasts for a minute. Like, to be very real, most encounters, I mean, granted, like, if you're fighting with the BBEG, it's probably going to last longer than a minute, but most encounters don't last much longer than that.
No, not really.
And so, in any
not
given
with the full
situation, party. That is, you pop that the first time you get hit, and then you just freaking go ham with anybody within 5. Let's go. That is what you would want to do. Now, granted, with how you recover these, it would be challenging. Yeah,
you wouldn't want to just pop that right away, but it's situationally.
But when the time comes, it's freaking go time.
Oh yeah, no, situationally, you know what I mean? Number 3 is the most effective and most useful in most situations. I think the first one, though, pushing an enemy back, blocking, and then reflecting half damage.
Oh yeah,
I think that one hands down is just going to be abused.
So, question for you, quick hypothetical. All right, you have this shield, you're a paladin, whatever, and you are fighting this BBEG, right? You are in this battle. You have your teammates supporting you, but you guys have been dungeon delving, so you guys are kind of low on resources. Mm-hmm. You have all 3 of your charges right now. Is your mindset in this battle, I'm going to use, I want to have all 3 of my charges to be able to use the first ability in case I almost die or in case something happens? Like, I wanna have the ability to use that 3 times. Or is your mentality, screw this, I'm gonna pop number 1 or number 2, the double, the one that costs 2, and I'm gonna use that for as long as I can in this fight to give me as much of an advantage in this fight, and then just save 1 of my last charge, just in case I need to prevent damage 1 time. Like,
so
I'm curious which one, like, in a situation like that, I would even choose.
So I would say that, okay, so again, a lot of context here. So dungeon delving, we're in a few, we haven't rested in a bit, we're all pretty low. At this point, under those circumstances alone, I'm not looking to bust these out quickly, but depending on how the fight's going. Obviously, if it's looking like it's going to be a challenge or it's not going in our favor, I'm busting out the expend 2 because of the disarm. Period, end of story. Because most DMs are not smart enough to give enemies backup weapons, or they're just going to throw in like a dagger. So you take away you choose the worst enemy. If it's one enemy, if it's multiple enemies, you choose the one that's hurting the most, and you disarm him. You've taken away a lot of the damage difficulties, and you've allowed one target focus that they're gone. They're down. They're out. Then, on top of that, right, you've now disarmed the main issue where the rest of your party can fight that back on them. Then, as the paladin and as the tank, you have that one last final charge, and that's the one you use because you want to essentially use that. I would use that one over the protective, especially in the case of what you guys described. Because as a paladin, I would prefer the sacrifice move. I would rather put myself in between me and an ally, attempt to take the hit, most likely block it, but if I get hit, negate it, send it back, do more damage to the enemy, and maybe even kill them with that final shot. So strategically, I would say as a paladin, if we are already low, it's not early in a battle, and we're struggling, I would say pop the double, take out the biggest guy's weapon, just take him out automatically, let everyone else focus on him, then I can focus on that last charge. Because, again, being a paladin, I probably have healing, I probably have resurrect. Let my teammates go down. That +2 to AC at this point ain't gonna help you. But me being able to survive and take 50%, because imagine holding on to that. Again, you do your double, you knock out his, you kill you kill the barbarian, right? Now you have the wizard, and he does his final once a day attack, right? His big level 8 spell, and you go, nah, I'm gonna negate that, and then you're gonna take half of it. And guess what? Their glass cannon fucking shatters itself.
I have a question.
That's my tactical use of it.
I have a question, but I very much agree with your evaluation of that. Why can I not spell?
Thank you.
There we go. All right.
Cosmic liked the way I worded that.
Okay, so it technically would. So my question would have been, would the first ability be able to deflect something like the disintegrate spell? Because
it says on hit.
It does. And so because I remember, that's okay, not disintegrate, power word kill. Because that's technically not doing damage. It just says if your hit points are something, you die.
I guess what it would come down to more or less is your definition of hit. Like now you're coming into semantics.
Yes.
So on hit, what does on hit mean? Does that mean an attack? Because is this an attack? Do you consider this an attack?
And technically, if you're reading the wording of a spell, most of them that say on hit require specifically an attack roll, and a lot of them, like say what's it called? It's the cantrip, the Sacred Flame.
Mm-hmm.
That's a saving throw, and says so instead of saying on a hit, it says on a failed save.
True.
And so
and then,
would you consider that a hit?
And that's where it comes down to DM to DM.
You know?
And to me, hit is very vague. I mean, again, we're not even talking about a rules as written kind of thing. This is just Cosmic's wording. So again,
and it's more like how does he want to play it? Like,
so
how does he want
I would say my ruling in High Point would be for things like that. If it's successful, you can still use the shield's ability, but something like that would just be negated because there is no damage to reflect. Unless you wanted to go full balls to the wall and say, no, this is divine magic. Mm-hmm. Power word kill, half is still power word kill.
I mean, it is.
Unless you wanted to be pedantic, you'd be like, well, half of kill is key, so you charge him. But I'm saying is, my thing is if this is truly divine, right? This is not a magical item. This is a divine weapon from the god of creation of everything.
Yeah.
My call would be that something like power word kill would be negated, and it's up to the DM to decide, does that have a half damage? Now, to me, I would do a roll.
It does.
I would
have
make it.
Oh wait, no, that's the same.
I would do a roll. I would do a percentile. So I would say that if it hits you, if it attacked you, you can use your charge. Your charge is going to deflect it. However, I would probably do a percentile roll, 50-50 chance that the damage gets deflected. Because again, my theory is that if it's half damage, that's your 50-50 chance. And if it succeeds and you send it back, there is no half power word kill. Half a power word kill is still the spell power word kill.
If you wanted to half power word kill, you could say if the creature has 50 hit points or fewer, they die. Instead of 100 hit points or fewer, they die. Like, that could be a version of halving it, but they're still dying. Like, regardless.
You say that any creature hit by this immediately drops to half of their current hit point value.
There you go.
So that could be half of power word kill.
Now,
or drops down to 1 hit point because that's not quite killing you.
I will say this.
You're still alive.
I will say this. So, power word kill is a 9th level spell. At what point would you say a leveled spell rivals divine magic?
9th is, in my opinion, 9th level spells are the veil between mortal magic and divine magic, if that makes sense.
Yes,
like the idea of opening the veil. That is, you are dipping your toe in the waters of divine magic. You are not wielding divine magic, but you are just now peeking into the realm of, oh, this is power. Like again, power word kill is just that makes sense for a ninth. I mean, gods can blink people out of it. You can't blink a god out of existence with power word kill, but you're understanding the power at your fingertips to literally annihilate a human life. It's not just killing someone. It is just done. Like it's that essence of you have to go beyond ninth level. But the reason why I'm always on the fence on whether I believe in the ninth level cap, but the way I reason it is that mortal magic, mortal understanding can only go so far. I do allow for beyond ninth level magic, but not essentially at a mortal level. Like
you're tapping into other things at that point.
If you're a playing character, especially if you're a mortal playing character, once you get to the point to where you can cast level 9 in my realm, the only way to go beyond that, there is no leveling. You can't just stay a mortal and just make level 300. You're capped out. The only way to go past level 9 is to learn how to branch and combine magics, like use different things, or become an immortal and start to learn actual divine level magic, like beyond, like actual non-mortal magic. But the only way a mortal can do beyond ninth level is you have to learn how to essentially use multiple magics. You have to learn how to splice and do different things, or you have to tap into very, very naughty things like blood magic or soul magic. And then you're just getting into really nasty areas.
Soul magic is a danger zone.
Yeah.
So in a situation like that, like if I am a 20th level wizard tapping into 9th level magic, and I want to build a 10th level spell, and I want to mess with or weave into, like, where magic comes from and, like, how they create, like, in write the code for a magic spell, like, whatever the case may be. Does the fact that I'm doing that change me into something more than mortal?
No, because again, in High Point, if you are a mortal trying to do that, first off, it would just probably take you, decades before you learn your lesson. But if you got close, let's say you found, or you were doing the right combinations of things. Let's say you were, because when I say like you have to splice, I'm talking about things like, again, using like Dresden Files as an example. Like you can have like, my wizard's magic. You can throw forces of magic around up to 9th level, but unless you tap into your soul and use soul magic, you're not going to produce beyond 9th level. If you don't kill someone and use their blood, their fresh dead blood, to fuel magic, you're not going to go beyond that. If you don't do things that are essentially borderline magically illegal, or warlocks are one of the reasons why warlocks get locked into why you can't max out with warlocks, because you can have all the magics that you want, but you can't max out any of them, because a warlock that had 9th level abilities across the board would literally be the power of a god. Because if you could do a 9th level sorcerer, a 9th level mage, and a 9th level bard, and a 9th level wizard, and combine all of that together, that's divine level magic, which is why warlocks are locked to only so high in level. You can't max out on all of them for that exact reason. So if you were a mortal and you somehow were delving in, hence why Zenith creates so many people to look over things. There are people in place to stop that from happening. There is a reason, a defined reason why mortals don't get divine magic. You're not divine, and it's not just because you're not divine. It's like the concept of like it's now, dangerous.
When you say divine, are you talking about divine in level or divine in nature?
Both.
Because like say a wizard, they're not messing with divine nature magic, but the level of
When we talk about divine, it's all contextual, right? Divine could mean the divine source of power, like from god to cleric, or divine as in a essence of power, a power level. So immortals have divine magic, but mortals do not. A cleric can wield divine magic provided by the god, but mortals do not create, produce, or manipulate magic that they aren't again, the only divine magic mortals can manipulate are the ones that it's given. So, other warlocks from D&D that have patrons, that is a divine type of magic that they wield, but it isn't their own. They do not, like a wizard or a sorcerer, they don't pull it, they don't manipulate it. It is given to them in a box, and this is the box that they can use, right? A cleric is given a spell by their god, and their god says, you are allowed to use my magic or my power through you this way and this way only.
So if they're trying to do it in and of themselves, if they're trying to go outside, again, you're a 20th level wizard, you've been doing this forever, you've been studying magic, and you're trying to, we'll say air quotes, play beyond your means,
So a lot of stuff can happen.
You're talking about, like, there are forces that want to stop you, and maybe I'm thinking too hard into this, like I always do, but the mindset is, if the circumstances are right, if I know how to hide myself properly from the correct people, if I'm the BBEG and I'm trying to do some fuck shit, right? And not necessarily through blood magic, but like through the genuine, like, ripping and tearing and manipulating of magic, granted, it might have some severe consequences, but shit could happen.
Yeah, so the idea is this. On multiple levels, the idea is that balance needs to be preserved, right? Zenith went through this already in his earlier versions of letting mortals have too much power. So hence why he has certain limitations. But those limitations aren't just his. There aren't just his rules. There's also, again, with the hierarchy of how power works, having mortals dealing with divine magic is just deadly for the mortal. For the most part, a mortal handling divine magic will just tear them apart, literally atom by atom. So that's one of the reasons. That's one of the many challenges you have to overcome, is the moment you press beyond your means, you're probably just going to disintegrate yourself, let alone piss anybody else off. Like, you'll probably kill yourself long before you get anyone's attention. But let's say you get over that problem. So first off, you've learned how to even tap into and touch the waters, let alone do anything with them yet. Well, you're going to get people's attention because people are in charge of certain balances, and that's their job. Now, can you hide from them for so long? Will they immediately come after you? It depends on what you're doing, but maybe you can go a little bit longer. So you have to essentially prepare yourself for the fact that you can't handle the magic, so you have to find a way to survive it. Other people don't want you messing with that balance because, again, Zenith has seen the negatives, and a mortal, even though you disintegrate yourself, you could also do catastrophic harm to the prime material plane with divine magic untapped. Imagine, like, you can turn the faucet on outside, but imagine taking a hammer and busting the faucet off. Yeah. That's a whole different problem. You may die in the process because you drowned, but then everybody else has to deal with that whatever else happened. So there's that reason why they don't want that happening, because, again, divine magic has purposes and reasons. So mortals who don't understand the balance of creation and the balance of the realm, tapping into that power is dangerous. It's like, I just want to, take some water from this stream, so I'll just make myself a little stream. It's like, but that tiny little diversion could have catastrophic changes down the line. So there's that reason. There's also the personal and selfish reasons. There are people out there who are also trying to do that very thing, and they don't want you getting there first. There are people who want mortals to do that thing, so they may try to help you. But, that could also bring unwanted attention. So in essence, is it impossible for a mortal to tap into and fuck with divine magic? Technically, no. It is not impossible. Are there plenty of obstacles to overcome? Yes. A lot of it's going to just be how and can you, and then it's how do you get around who's going to stop you. So it's like, how are you going to get around dying? How are you going to get around who's going to stop you? And then what are you going to do with it? And when you get into all of that, what it boils down to normally for most people is it's easier just to ascend and be granted godhood and divine power than it is to take it early. Which, by the time you're that level of wizard, thinking about that, you've probably done enough to gain someone's attention that ascension probably isn't out of the question. And you're more likely to succeed ascending
than you are
to force your way into owning that.
See, imagine
this. It's kind of like nuclear weapons in the real world. The difference between trying to get everyone to accept that you're building your own nuclear weapon in your backyard, or getting enough people to follow you and becoming a country and being allowed to do it? Like, what's more likely to happen?
So this is probably just me as a player being a dick, but like I'm trying to find every which way to make it possible, right? Like,
I didn't say it was. I did not say it was impossible.
And what I mean by
and that's the whole point. Is it's meant to be gamed.
Is what I mean by possible is a scenario in which it could be real. Like,
yes, it's happening currently. Like I said, you wouldn't be the only person trying this.
Thinking that like there's somebody out there that's like, hey, I'm gonna see if I can ally myself with all the right people that are just powerful enough to stop all the people that I know want to stop me, that I can hide myself long enough and right enough so that by the time they realize what the fuck I'm fucking with, it's already too fucking late.
And there are people out there that are doing similar things. I mean, you haven't actually met the devil yet, have you?
No.
Oh, so he's trying to do something similar, but
unless Allo has inadvertently met him.
No, I don't think your characters have met. Crow has met him, but I don't think anybody else has. Crow actually works for him right now. Signed a deal with him. But no, so the devil that I have in my realm, at least this particular NPC, he goes by the devil. It is just currently a title, and it's interesting because when he like writes his contracts, he has this whole thing that he can write contracts with, and it's all in demonic. But what's interesting is if you can't read demonic, it doesn't really matter. But even if you can't read demonic, there is one thing that's always noticeable: is there are certain things that because it's a contract with you, you'll just instinctually know about it. Even if you can't read it, you just know. And one thing that always pops out when he does his contracts is that when it ever refers to him as the devil, the way it's written is a title, not a name.
And it's obvious that it's a title.
He can't get around it, but he only goes by it. He only ever goes by that, and he claims it as his own, and he always has. So his whole deal is he understands that thoughts are power, and he understands that people putting things into things are power. So through his adventures, his concept is he wants to create this persona that's so steeped and ingrained in everywhere he can make it that he will essentially force his way into godhood by literally having enough people believe it. So he's actively defying all of the other gods by ascending himself, literally attempting to ascend through a way that is not technically allowed.
That's kind of my mentality.
But it's different though, because instead of messing with the powers and he's not allowed to, he's literally doing it in front of everyone's face, and they have tried to stop him, and he's gotten stopped many times. There's actually a song about that. Here's what I'm
thinking: is like the person that I was imagining, like their entire purpose was, and again I don't know details, whatever. It's just what I'm thinking. But this person was like, I don't like the hierarchy that exists right now. You gods thinking that you're better than us humans. I don't want to ascend to godhood. I want to be a human that fucks you up.
Okay.
I want to be a regular ass dude, and I want to say, fuck you and your rules. I can do whatever I want to do. We are just as powerful. I don't need to be you to be you.
So there were a ton of people like that, mostly in the Second Great War, and a few of them survived to the Third Great War. And that's what those two wars were primarily about. The First Great War was essentially like the power of the primals, like the actual gods and deities. The next Great War was the power struggle between deities and mortals. And primarily was because of that. People were like, we don't like you, but we don't need to be you to do it better. So that's where the Second Great War came in. That was the giant balance of power. That's when I used to just kind of let a lot of things just slide. And then the Third Great War was the Mortal War, which is basically how I've set up everything and how that all works. But all the wars went from top to bottom. So it was the first war, the first big change of the realm was all the gods deciding things and Zenith figuring out how power is going to be distributed, which there's some great, I cannot wait till you guys dive into the lore and like actually talk to deities about that shit. Because the primes, the deities who have been around since the beginning, they got some shit to say about the
See, this is why Hollow
iterations.
needs to come back, man. He's the closest person to hanging out and chatting with gods and
Nah,
whatnot.
Dovd is. I mean,
Well,
let's face it, Dovd
yeah,
is literally chatting with gods.
That's kind of fair. That's kind
But
of
yeah,
fair.
so like again, I love that I do the layers of story like this because like
Very
they've
much
been
so.
there and you know they've had to put up with every change, right? So it's like there was the power struggle with the gods, the power struggle between the gods and mortals, and then the power struggle amongst the mortals, and then now we're here in the current phase of High Point. And yeah, in the Second Great War and the Third Great War, there were many people, more in the second than the third, but have that mindset. And some of them still exist. Some of them
Yeah.
survived all the wars. Even the Second Great War, there are still some mortals who were here at the Second Great War who still have that mindset that it could be done better. And that's all I can say, really, is that
Make
they're
some
here.
friends. Let's make some. See, I really want Cosmic to give us a little bit of history between like his god pantheon. Like we know about like some of like where his gods are at now,
Right, but
the
like
dragon
the
goddess.
history.
But like, I want to know like were they friends? Did they know each other? Are there any more out there? Like
So
what's good?
he does have a little bit more for us. So he says, to me, as the world's items and effects maker, so as the creator of it, he would rule that saving throw based attacks and power word kill could not be deflected by the shield's first effect. AoEs like fireballs could possibly work if you are within it. He's not 100% sure on the ruling for that effect versus AoE. So like we were talking, if an AoE effect hits you, does your shield count? Or does it have to be a target? And that's where the semantics of the verbiage. Are you going to change it to the target of an attack or not?
Yeah.
And then he also says, I wonder what we like. He wonders what we liked more, the shield item itself that we went over, or the lore of the homebrew world and the origin of the world's magic. Hands down, the lore. Like between, I mean, if it's a choice between just this one item or even just the set, even the series and concept of items or this lore, it has to be the lore. I mean, the fact that you've gone through that many layers of understanding of what created the world, what brought us here today, where magic's coming from, what's going to happen if they succeed. The fact that you have all of that in already and you're not even done with your BBEG, that trumps any magical item. Like it just does. Like there's no one magical item that's going to overcome that good of detail.
I agree a lot. I really think that to me the lore is what gives the magical items a lot of their value. Like a lot of what I enjoy about interacting with them is interacting with the pieces of them that are part of, you know, what this world was and is, you know, like
the crystals. Like the crystals could be cool. Like you can tell me you got cool magical gems and crystals. Like look, D&D is full of crystals, right? You need a crystal of 2000 GP in order to do this. You need a gem of 20,000 GP to do this. But to tell me that these crystals, to learn that these crystals are organs of an ancient god, and I'm in the hollowed out like grave that was once his body and bones, that changes not only the spectacle of that story, but when you use it, it's kind of like when Carl Sagan, you know, his famous line that we are all star stuff. It's like when you finally understand that, when you learn about supernova, how elements are created, and then you do realize that every little tiny thing that actually created you had to have come from a star first. It's like that is what your story is doing. Is it takes this cool item, it's like, yeah, I can play with this, and then you're like, oh wait, it's what now? Right. I don't. Oh, that's more power. Like it's just, it makes it more intrinsic. It makes it more, I don't want to say valuable, but it brings it more to life. And, and 100% the lore gives it everything. Because again, you could be like, hey, cool, you got this 2+ sword. Or it's like, this is a 2+ sword that was once owned by the greatest swordsman who then ascended to the god of all swordsmen.
And like the way I would interact with it would change dramatically.
Yeah, give any character a +2 sword and then give it a named +2 sword. Like, watch how they treat it.
It's crazy. It's beautiful.
Like right out the gate, you give anybody a +2 dagger, and then you give another character in a different game like a +2 dagger, but you call it like the dagger of Morkoth, and then you give it like a small little description of like what it was. see which one of them replaces it quicker when they get to the +3 item. Literally, 2-3 gaming sessions later, give them an option to swap it out for a +3 dagger and see which one does it faster. Because the person with the named thing is going to be like, I kind of want to hold on to that. Now, they might not give it up, but I'm just saying, like...
This is kind of a tangent, but just as a player, I am the type of player who I don't like replacing items. Just in general. Like, I
don't like when the game is focused on you swapping things out. Like, better weapon. No, that's not how it works, man. Hold on to it.
I get, like, hey, you come across some gear, it's better than whatever, but, like, I don't like going out and, like, looking, I need to go upgrade this, or I need to go get a better... Because then I feel like I'm always just trying to get better gear to go survive, you know?
Exactly. And that's why that's actually one of the reasons why I like second edition in terms of, like, the gear setup and how they rolled with it, because you basically kind of set yourself up for, this is my build, this is what I use, and you can manipulate that over time. And I like the idea of coming up with the weapons becoming better.
Yeah.
Not the idea of, like, I have a short sword, now I'm going to use a long sword, now I'm going to use a great sword, but the idea of you using you have a short sword and that's what you like. Okay, we're going to fit this in, and the only thing I'm going to try to tempt you with.
Yeah, because they allow you to customize what it is that you find valuable. Hey, right. I want this to be more valuable to me. So that means anytime I do this, now it's more valuable. I can do it more often. I can hit harder with it. I can whatever, like. And
that's why I like doing the way that, with the proficiency points increasing your ability to do attack and damage with a weapon. That's what I like about it, because you take your base weapon, but what you're doing is you're allowing your time with said weapon to increase, right? And obviously that matters, which is why I like the idea that not only can you have more attacks, have more damage over time with the same weapon, but then if you upgrade that single weapon, like you mastered the short sword, now you get a short sword +1. You still get all the bonuses of having learned all that short sword instead of just a new weapon +1. It's still in that same rotation of, but this is the same weapon, right? Like, instead of, again, just upgrading to something that has more damage, you're already doing more damage.
Yeah.
The only reason you now want to replace this item is because it is, like, magically better. But again, kind of like, what we've talked about too, I don't do this for every player, but I do like giving players either a weapon, armor, or item that is not plot-centric, but story-centric, as in backstory-centric or something. Like, you have your, the staff from your dad, your journal from your dad. Vixie's character got a sword and then the necklace eventually. So yeah, everybody kind of has, like, these things, and whether it's something that I prefer.
Combat. Oriented either.
Well, and because some of them, some things I give for, based on what I think is beneficial. Like, I gave her the sword because she wanted to have a rapier, so I gave her a special rapier. You wanted the staff, and then I just kind of filled out the journal as well because you had that. But like with Crow, he designed his cloak. He wanted his own, like, version of a cloak, so that's the personal story bound item that he had. Doesn't really do him much, but it helps him RP that character a lot better. And I like that. I like giving people things that feel more personalized and that they want to hold on to, because it can be fun when you're just, like, every couple gaming sessions you just find a better weapon that your character can use. But this is another reason why I kind of like second edition. One of the reasons why I go for second edition in terms of my mechanical build is I get having a build that says, well, I'm a martial artist and I can handle all light weapons. It's like, okay.
Did you really use all light weapons?
It's like, yeah, but it's like, that's like me saying, like, I own, like, over 40 or 50 swords. I know how to use them all, but there's only 3 I trust myself in a life to death battle with. I know how to wield. I know how to slash and cut and bash with all of the weapons I own. But there's probably only 3 I would take into an actual fight with. So the concept of, like, this battle I'm going to use, like, daggers, and then, next gaming session, fuck it, I'm going to use this short sword now. Fuck it, I'm going to use a great sword. Like, that idea is so difficult for me unless you have a character who is that build. You say, I want to be a martial character who has studied and is moderately proficient with all weapons, right? Or a select group. I don't mind that as a character build because I do kind of like that, especially if you play it. If you're in a battle and go, I hit this guy and I stab him and I let go, and then I roll over to the battlefield and I pick this guy's weapon up and then I slap. If you were doing that in battle and weapon to weapon, that would be a cool build. But the idea that you can just go from weapon to weapon whenever you feel like, I don't like, which is why I like you brought up, proficiency, having weapon proficiencies and saying, I am going to put effort into learning this weapon. Not that you can't pick up another weapon, but this is the weapon I want to be good with. I want to get better at this weapon, and if you want to pick up another weapon, it costs. Because I don't like the idea that you can have spent the last 6 months to a year to 5 years in game handling that longsword, and then out of nowhere, you're going to pick up a dagger and just... You know, like, you're not just going to pick up a dagger and just because it's a light weapon does not mean you are going to be in a bar fight, pull out a dagger, and bar fight someone with a dagger when you are normally 5 feet away with a sword. So, it just doesn't make sense to me.
And I'm totally with that. I will say that I do think that there are elements that might enable you to be better in the sense that, okay, so I am a martial artist. When I started learning weapon fighting in general, I started with eskrima sticks. Sticks about yay long, you know, but that translated into almost every other weapon. When I learned like the basic strikes with an eskrima stick, those are the exact same angles and strikes that you're going to use with a katana, that you're going to use with a dagger, that you're going to use with a... And like I said, you're not going to be as proficient.
And that's what I'm saying. It makes sense to be able to pick it up and not fumble with it. Like, if you are a light weapon master and you pick up a two-handed greatsword, you're going to have disadvantage all over the board. If you would normally fight with a short sword, I won't give you full disadvantage with the dagger, but you're not going to get anything other than one attack with it. You just don't, even though you have the techniques down, you have the mindset down, it's a different weight. You're not actually physically ready to have a life or death battle with it because it's not muscle memory. You have senses, you have similarities. I agree with that, but that's why I like the proficiency idea, that you can have multiple proficiency points in a single weapon, and that's the weapon that will give you all the boost, the extra attacks per round, the extra damage dealt, because you know how to use it. You have the muscle memory. It isn't a question. Whereas picking up another weapon, you might have the general fundamentals of it, but it's going to be a lot different if you were to try to pick up that and then do a tournament. You know, you'd be better with the eskrima sticks than you would with something heavier or lighter.
I would say something like
But you wouldn't necessarily be floundering. That's the idea. You wouldn't be floundering. You wouldn't be at a complete disadvantage, but you would not be at the top of your game.
I would say something to this adventure. If Davd were in a tournament and he was in that tournament with his staff, he would be fucking pro.
Yeah.
Right? If he was in that same tournament with an eskrima stick, he would not be nearly as pro, but he'd probably be okay. Right? They translate a lot. If he was in that same tournament with a halberd, he would be way better than he was with the eskrima sticks, but not as good as he was with the staff.
And that, yeah, and contextually that makes sense.
There is, for me, like a scale, because, you know, the similarities in which you go to something with, like the things that are akin to what you do and how you operate. Like, you know, if I'm going to swing over my head, I'm going to know how this type of move works, whereas I wouldn't otherwise.
You would know how it works, but again, in the context of battle, the weight difference and your muscle memory would not be as effective. Now, granted, you're right. It would be better than the eskrima stick because it is the right shape and size. But the weight and movement of it would not react the same way. So as well as you would be able to wield it, it's still, like you said, it would not be at the pro level.
Yes, but I would also say a large part of being a martial artist is adaptability.
True.
And adaptability in situations that are similar enough. And so being able to adjust for those differences in weight, being able to adjust for those differences in length, like,
and that's why I said,
over
like,
time, learn to feel out what that kind of stuff.
But that's not every. And see, I disagree. That's every martial artist though. Like, and that's why I said you can make a build that does this. I don't mind you making a build, but the idea that, like, because I know swordsmen, I know sword masters who have mastered different weapons.
Oh, for sure.
And for them, it is like, yeah, they know how to pick up another weapon, but there's no way in hell they would take it into battle. And that's the idea is relatability isn't the same as usability. Like, I know how to, like, sew. Like, I can sew a patch, but that doesn't mean I can't sew a shirt. I'd be better at sewing a shirt than the average person, but would that shirt last me more than a couple days? And that's what I'm saying, is if you had the right build, like in my realm, if you had like the right build and you had the right feats, I could allow for that. But this is why I choose the proficiency method instead of the weapon.
So
because I don't like the idea that everybody's that level of martial artist, right? Because
what I'm talking about is very nuanced and very hard to articulate in mechanics.
Well, no. You are articulating it very well. It's just it's
like to represent in mechanics in like a game. Like it's going to be hard. Like what I'm talking about, there's not going to be like an easy way to just be like, oh, you get a plus this or plus this, or you get 2 attacks, or you get 2 automatic. Like, there's no way to like accurately articulate what those transferable skills may or may not be in a situation like that.
Right.
I mean, I only speak from my own personal experience. Like, I would say I am personally a proficiency 4 with a bow staff, right? If I were to put it in D&D terms. But I would also say that if you were to put me into a combat situation against somebody who knows what they're doing and I'm holding a bow staff, I'd be able to hold my own.
Oh, yeah.
I'd also be able to do that with an eskrima stick or a halberd. Probably not a 3-sectional staff, even though there's some... probably not nunchucks, even though I have had some training with it.
Right.
Probably not commas, but definitely a dagger. Definitely an eskrima stick. Definitely a katana, not nearly as much, because a lot of katana work, especially when you get into the details of it, is two-handed. Right?
Yeah.
And the type of two-handed you're using for the katana is incredibly different than the type of two-handed that you use for a bow staff.
Yeah.
Even though there are similarities, the follow-through, a lot of that stuff is
and that's
very,
what I'm saying,
different.
is like, and the difference between a bow staff and a halberd, I mean, that's several pounds of difference. Like, you're not going to be twirling the halberd the same way. And again, you have to think of, like, you have so much more, like, on the dime control with a bow staff, whereas a halberd isn't going to stop on a dime. You're not going to twirl the halberd and then stop it with one hand.
Again, as a martial artist, like, I know that, and so I'm not going to try.
But going up against someone who is with a proficient weapon and you are not with your proficient weapon...
And so
that's what I'm talking about, is that's where it makes more sense why you're not going to be as good, because if
I'm fighting somebody at their top level, at my top level, 100%.
Yeah.
I 100% agree with you, but I'm talking more like, okay, I'm proficient in this. You're just over there hand to hand. You're not necessarily top. You're average, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, there are certain weapons you could put in my hand that would put me at a disadvantage playing with it, right? So like it would be bad for me to even try and mess with it, or that it would be so average. It would be basically like I had no weapon at all, right? And so like there are other situations where it's like, no, I could easily hold my own against, we'll say a henchman. Like, to put a name to it, like put a henchman in front of me. I could handle this henchman with this plethora of weapons easily. Right? Clearly I'll be the best with this, not as good with this, but I could totally hold my own in those situations. Now, if you're gonna put me up against somebody my freaking level with their ideal weapon and me not in my ideal weapon, the fuck no. No, of course. Yes.
Yeah.
Like, but I find it very interesting that there are so much, like, I was even thinking about it the other day, about, like, because my ADHD brain, like, works differently and different things trigger, and like, how would you add that as a mechanic in game? Like, say if weird thought, but just like, say if you wanted to create a character with ADHD who hyper focuses on something, or somebody who, they might forget where they put their keys, but they can remember where a book is in a shelf in a library that's like 4 stories tall or something like that. Like, there's some weird specific things.
The only way to do that is really roleplay,
yes.
And there really is no mechanical way to do that, because there's just, you'd have to keep track of not keeping track.
and
Like literally, you'd have to keep track of all the things you're not allowed to remember, and the things that you are like. There's no way to do it.
It would be insanity.
Yeah.
It would be insanity. And I think there's some things that like just don't straight translate that. But I don't know. I find it very interesting to relate to sometimes.
All right. Well, we got one more question from Cosmic, and then we gotta go.
Shut it down.
Yeah, it's almost been 3 hours. It's past 10, so I think that's a good time to end it. But we got one more question. So
right.
He does want to know what do we like most about the world's lore? The origin of magic, the concept of the scales and its custom items, post campaign dungeon, or the fight with the BBEG and the world creating goddess / like the party's fight with the memory of her. Out of all of it, I would say in all, I really like the story behind her, the battle, the capture, and then that is the presence of magic. I think that is really what, I do like the idea of her scales. That is really cool. It is unique, but it takes a lot for me to get really wowed by a divine design, just because I have so many of my own, and just because I've heard so many that a divine creature is hard to be wowed by because they're just divine. They get to do whatever. I love the description of that one. Very unique. Haven't heard that one before about the changing of the scales. And I do like the idea of the multiple of like dungeons, especially the last one with the multiple levels and having that all about the zodiac. That's a cool idea, especially for a like end game like final kind of like run. But really, when it comes down to like the full lore and the full like actual story that affects the players, it's going to have to be the fact that she's trapped, and that trapment is what creates magic. That right there is just such a clean description.
For me, I'm gonna say it almost feels like the mythology as a whole. Like if I think about, you know, like Greek mythology or like, you know, Eastern mythology or a lot of the pantheons, like the pantheon you're beginning to paint, which is why I keep asking about like the connections between the different gods. Like, do they know each other? Like what is that home life for them look like type deal, you know? Like when I hear about this goddess being trapped, it gives me the same type of vibes. Like there's this guy I follow on TikTok, and he talks about he beautifully describes the different mythological stories, and he was talking about Pandora and her box, and like how she was created and what the gods did, and the whole story behind, like, you know, Loki and how he started Ragnarok, and his kids were like a big part. Like all of these different like pieces that come together to create the overall story is what I enjoy so much. Like I feel like I could be a bard walking around like singing the tales of these heroes, of these fallen, you know, gods that are now a part of the earth, you know. I could be a bard in the temple of the hammer, the mace, you know, like sticking out of the ground, singing the story of how he fell in the first place, and how we now go into his body and pull out, you know, gems and sparks of life that we now use to create our society. Like all the different things, like you can just put it together to breathe life into an otherwise, you know, very factual place. Mm-hmm. You know, yes, you can do this, but this is how you can do this. This is why you can do this. This is that's what I think
what it comes down to is that's what separates it from just a game to being the RPG aspect, is because, you know, just being able to tell players like this is what you can do, it's like, okay, that's cool, but it's like why and how you do it is what makes them come back, right?
And you can poke at it, and you can play with it, and you can be creative.
It's the intrigue
and getting to be a part of that process. Like we always say, it's a collaborative effort. I love that. No, it's really way cool.
All right. Well, that was a really fun one. Got to do quite a bit. Got to kind of sort of stayed on topic, but for the most part, got to do a lot more discussion about just item building and a lot of our thoughts. Thank you again, Cosmic, for giving us another item to review. Keep them coming.
Appreciate it.
We will keep doing this probably every Monday to start out with. And
that crystal staff.
Oh yeah,
forget about that.
Definitely let us know about the offensive crystal staff, or the offensive. It's not really offensive, but
so offensive. How dare you?
But yeah, we'll keep doing this. I think we will on Mondays continue posting or going live for just chatting, just to see how that's going to work for Mondays. Thursdays we'll go back to the D&D category, and then I will still have just pop-up game streams if I feel like it. But thank you for joining us. We will be back. I will be back on Thursday. Kage will hopefully be back next Monday.
Yeah.
I hope you guys have a wonderful week, and I hope work's not going to be too bad if it's not already started out for you guys. But yeah, have a wonderful night. We're going to go ahead and end it here. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of the week. Thank you again for coming, and we'll see you on Thursday.